Nailed it. Hello, welcome to The Honest Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob. Welcome to the Age of Sigmar Monday show, which is quickly and rapidly becoming a land expansionist show. I'll have you know that by the end of this show, most of the people on this show will own several parts of Zimbabwe. Hello to Nathan Prescott, the, co-owner, I think, in most of Eskimo Hut's main business now. Nathan, how you doing?
Number 2, the second, the virtual Eskimo.
Yes, Eskimo Hut 2.
It's probably worth more money in virtual than it is in real life. But there you go. Yeah, I'm doing good, thank you. And you?
I'm absolutely knackered. I don't know, like, yesterday just wiped me out, if I'm 100% honest with you. I'm dead like a dodo. We did the show with Owen earlier, and halfway through I was like, yeah, I reckon I'm about done today. About done. You know, you have one of those days, you're about done. But excited to be here, excited to talk about the FAQ hopes for Age of Sigmar. We're also joined by James. Hi, James. How you doing?
Afternoon.
How's
Evening.
things?
Yeah, very well, thank you. How are you?
Really good, really good. As a co-investor in our land in Zimbabwe, our land grab in Zimbabwe, how do you feel?
Yeah, super good. Just brought it.
Did you?
Yeah.
How much was it?
How much did it cost us?
$1.21,
Fucking,
which was
we are
94p.
minted. If you guys don't know what we're talking about, there's something called Earth 2. No idea what it is. But James seems to think it's like Bitcoin of the future. So the very first...
He's hoping it is.
I've made 440%. Don't know if I can actually sell it, but 440% in 2 weeks or something.
Yeah, this is Wall Street bets all day long. It's what you're listening to. I have no idea what it is, but we've just bought the land on Earth 2 outside the ice cream hut that Nathan used to go to as a small boy and dream of goblins. I imagine, Nathan, is this true?
No, in those days, probably not goblins. They were called Tukoloch.
Tukoloch. The fuck is a Tukoloch?
That's a goblin in Africa.
An African goblin. Vote Twitch chat that we now only refer to as the Grots or Moon Gits as Moon Tukoloch. Amazing. So we're all now landowners. Thanks very much for subscribing to The Honest Wargamer and giving us enough money, specifically $1.20, to be able to be landowners in Earth 2. And hello to Dan. I haven't introduced Dan either. James, do you want to introduce him?
Yes,
Sigmar!
Just to my side is Liberator Dan. For those using our podcast, he's quiet today because he's contemplating the fall of his brethren back to lightning and the realm of Azir. For those of you that you can see, he's just sat solemnly as a Liberator, looking at the floor, maybe his hands, not really sure.
Contemplating how many elves he should be friends with.
Probably.
Yeah.
Right, today's show is going to be a fucking car crash. And thanks for listening to everyone on the podcast. Please do listen. I like how the guys on YouTube are just like straight in on the subject matter. They're like, FAQ suggestion, Razor Wolf, VP Perf. They're all getting in it. I love you. Thanks for doing that. There's at least 20 to 30 minutes of preamble before we get on with the subject. I would deeply love to get into this thing that we're buying parts of Earth 2 now. There's so many areas I want to buy. James, I want to buy the area around where CanCon happens. Get to it. That's also important. Where else?
Well, people might have brought that. Someone's apparently already brought the Eden project. So, all the exciting stuff gets brought. I just brought my road. So, shall I just go into what it is? Shall I do that bit first?
Yeah, but hold on. I'd just like to just point out that you've equivocated the area where CanCon happens, and I've been. It's a hangar into a dirt field, basically, Nathan. You've been. It's not much fancier than that. And
it's an agricultural trade show ground.
Yeah, it's an agricultural trade show ground. And as you know, they don't have any agriculture. They've mainly got fucking sand all over Australia. They grow a couple of sheep, I reckon. And what else do they grow, Nath? Papaya?
Toads, I think. Cane toads.
Oh, thanks for subscribing, MJ Pegasus and Birdie R08. Go on,
And
James, explain to me
Fosters.
what it
They
is.
got Fosters trees, don't they? There, they grow loads of Fosters.
Love Fosters. That's what they grow.
Yeah.
That's what they grow. Go on, James. Tell us quickly what the Earth 2 is.
So, Earth 2, I somehow stumbled on. So I've been living in a world of VR recently. Got a little.
Oh, there's a great
VR
suggestion in the
headset.
chat. We have to buy the GWHQ. Quick,
Don't
Oh
tell
my
anyone,
God!
I'm
Quick,
on it,
James!
I'm on it.
Oh, quick, James! Buy it. We'll talk. I promise we'll talk about it in a minute. MJ Pegasus, thanks for donating 5 gift subscriptions to the channel. You're a fucking babe. Thank you to Jim Brewer's bro. Fuck, I'm an illiterate bastard.
Words are hard today.
Thanks, MJ Pegasus. Right, hey, I wouldn't show up to streams or videos if there was at least 20 minutes minimum of random babbling. Agreed. Thank you so much. Speckles, yes.
Right.
James, you do that. I'll say hello to everyone in the chat.
Okay.
You try and buy Games Workshop on Earth 2. Yeah, we'll be billionaires. They're worth more than fishing.
Yeah, that's scary, right?
I know, we'll talk about that in a minute. Please tell me where I can find this. I want to buy Games Workshop Derby. Speckles, it's something called Earth 2. I have no idea what it is. James just talked about at the start of the show like he always does. Last week he was on an Oculus Rift, or whatever the fuck it was, playing fucking Farmville or something. He's mental. Look at him. Look at him. Look at his glasses. He clearly deals loads of cocaine, yeah, to kids, right? And with that money,
Warhammer World's really expensive.
How much does it cost?
Like 30 quid.
Oh, but it's worth it. We could own Games Workshop for the show. For the show. I'll ask the Twitch chat. Twitch chat, do you feel like we should own Games Workshop? This is the real question. Default, thanks for subscribing. I've been here so long. First time because... no, yes. No. You should buy... yes.
Yes.
There's a lot of votes for yes. 1 for no. Maybe, Nathan. Absolutely not. Yes. Yes. James?
Okay, I'm on it.
Yes. Colonel
I'm
Cabbage
selecting the tiles.
You'll make profit if you do.
I might
Think
not buy
about
the
that,
car
James.
park.
You're going to buy the car park.
No, I won't buy the car park. We'll just
If you
charge people.
listen, how good! If you bought the car park of Games Workshop on Earth 2, yeah, you could walk into the Games Workshop car park on Earth 1, and you could be like, "I'll have you know, I own this in another world." People will
the
think
other
you're
plane.
truly fucking mental, James.
Probably. I mean,
Yeah.
they wouldn't be wrong.
Yeah. Right. Anyway, welcome everyone to the show. Thanks. The point of today's show, if you'd missed it, Uncle
By
Claw,
Games
thanks for
Workshop.
following us. The point of today's show is we're going to be talking about the Age of Sigmar FAQ, the Winter FAQ, which happens every year. If you don't know what that is, every year there's a points and rules readjustment. Sometimes they do nothing, sometimes they do loads, and so you kind of get the GHB or a new edition in the summer, and then you have a winter FAQ. So we're going to be talking about our hopes and dreams. Colonel Cabbage, thanks for donating £1.69 towards us owning Games Workshop's car park on
Excellent.
Earth 2.
Oh no, I'm buying the whole thing.
You're buying the whole building! Oh, brilliant. Anyway, right, Nathan, have you done any Warhammer recently? What have you been up to?
No,
Let's fucking
I've
move
done
on.
nothing. Yeah, nothing at all. I've
You
not
did-
even finished the story about the rats and their election. So it's
Yeah.
terrible.
You haven't even finished your story?
Yeah, about the rats. Yeah. So
Oh, okay.
They've started stabbing each other. So
What else do you need?
I need to know who wins, but they're still counting. So fuck knows.
My question is to you. You did actually do some Warhammer yesterday, because yesterday, Dice Dome, thanks for donating 300 bits to the show. That'll get us there. That'll get us towards owning Games Workshop. James, are you putting a picture up? Could you tweet it from the Honest Wargamer that we own Games Workshop?
Yeah, I'll do it in a minute. I've just sent you a picture just so you can see the hilarity.
Where's my phone? This is brilliant. This is brilliant. Who doesn't? I can't wait to put this up from the Honest Wargamer. This will fucking trigger some people. Yes, James. Yes. We're rich
The fact
boys.
that It even says you own Lenton Lane, Nottingham.
We did it. Oh, this is what it's all been about. We'll lock the show off. Thanks very much to MJ Pegasus for donating 500 bits to help us. Appreciate that loads. You fucking babe. That's helped. Nathan, you did do some Warhammer. I was commentating on a game of Warhammer with you yesterday.
Yeah, I watched some Warhammer yesterday. Yeah,
How did you find that experience? Tell me.
that was good. Yeah, made me wish I was playing Warhammer again, big time. So yeah, hurry up with that thing, inoculation thing. Let's get the Warhammers going.
Let's get the Warhammers going. Have you thought about just doing it inside like a bodysuit? Full gimp out up sort of setup?
That's the way I normally do it, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh wait, hold on.
No.
Are you guys coming through double? Hold on. Let's stop that echo if that's bothering anyone. Okay, I've sorted it out. Go on, carry on. What are you saying?
Yeah, that was good to see some Warhammer, and yeah, I mean there are places around the world where they're playing Warhammer, lucky bastards. So hopefully we'll have our turn soon.
What if you could play Warhammer tomorrow? Who would you play, and what army would you play with?
I would play with my gits, and I'd play everybody that came.
Would you? Do you have enough gits to do? Have you watched the Queen's Gambit
Warhammer
yet?
slut. Sorry.
Thank you to everyone. Elko Remco and Scribs like all for donating 100 bits. Wait, Elko Reb donated 1,000 bits to help us.
Oh,
Thank you so much.
living the dream.
As the official owners of Lenton on Earth 2. We really appreciate that. Relmar Winters, thanks for donating 5 gift subscriptions as well. God, you guys have been brilliant. Really not helping me get on with the subject of the show.
I think it's because they now think we're going to give them 50% off Games Workshop models in Earth 2.
I promised everyone in the chat that in Earth 2, we'll give you all 75% off Games Workshop products. That's an honest Wargamer guarantee. James, can we do that?
Yeah, why not?
Well, we own it, so yeah.
Don't think it exists yet, but when it does,
James, follow-up question. Can we get some merch made saying, hey, like anyone who's a part of the Honest Wargamer team can just buy a t-shirt say, I own Games Workshop, and then in very small text underneath it, on Earth 2.
maybe we'll print the on Earth 2 on the inside that no one can see.
On the back of the shirt.
Yeah, just hidden under the sleeve, so it only shows if they're rolled up.
Oh, who's going to buy the Earth 2 T-Sports Arena? I mean, anyone that's got 50p, I reckon. Oh, it's actually looking really nice. James, you done any Warhammer this week? What's been going on?
I painted some rats. I brought Warhammer World and Earth 2. That's a recent addition, in case anyone hadn't heard that.
Serious hobby.
Yeah, not a huge amount, but I am just sat here looking at my property portfolio on a planet that doesn't exist.
You made me do the opposite of what I do, which is hydrate. I spat it all out.
So that's what I've been up to.
All right, good. That's some strong positives. Thank you to Grim Slacker for donating 500 bits and Speckles for donating 245 bits. You not done anything else?
I don't think so. I don't know. I honestly don't know where my weeks go at the minute. I think it's that more lockdown stuff. However, I have I guess some more parcels are going out. Like anyone that's still ordering objective rings, they're still going. That's about it. Nothing exciting, I'm afraid.
Good.
Still waiting on
positive.
drawings for the Undergarden.
Yeah. What's going on with the
still waiting on
Undergargons?
someone.
Yeah, what's going on with the
Everyone should poke John Scrivo, who's not drawn me any artwork, or we'll get Rob's. The only other the backup plan currently is that we use your rat from a previous stream, Rob, the Love Rat, and just print him on them.
What, my drawing?
Yeah, your drawing.
I don't agree with that at all. It doesn't
An
look...
original Rob Symes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I have so there are several bits of news before we get to the main subject. There's like Kinry Heartrender, Shadowstalker points. There's a bunch of really interesting stuff. The kind of big subject that I kind of want to approach, in a very news hardball style question. Nathan and me have got you, James, on for this like tough suggestions. When are we getting kickable objectives markers? That's the real question.
Like beach ball inflatable type ones.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know, to answer like someone else who would sell hobby products, what you could do if you would like kickable ones is buy 8 more and then just use those.
What do you mean? What? Flick them?
No, just instead of moving it, you just put another one down. Just buy 8 more. Easy.
That's it. That's the easiest system. Is there not some sort of like flicking device that we could invent that like a frisbee flinger?
Yeah, we'll try that. I'll print them in mouse mat material.
Yeah.
And then people can just pull those and all the models across the table, and they'll just have to agree to disagree that the models move with objectives now.
Do you know what this is? Classic. Thank you, Nate. Classic. Typical Games Workshop Earth 2 business practice. That's what it is. This will be the joke that never stops.
As a Games Workshop, as the owner of Lenton Lane and Games Workshop in Earth 2, it's the only way I can do business.
Wow, you're just Tub93, thanks for donating 500 bits as well. Wow, fucking what a babe. All right, so I did some Warhammering this weekend with Dan, but Dan's late. If you're wondering where Dan is he's going through some checkups to make sure he's allowed to join Canada, which I don't know what that involves. Does anyone know what that involves? I imagine you've got to like wrestle a moose, apologize to everyone who you meet for over 30 days, and probably I don't know what else. That's it. Any other thoughts?
Sounds good to me. Probably something to do with maple syrup, but I wouldn't know what.
Maybe that's what they do. They sit you in a room and they're like, how do you use your maple syrup? And then he has to answer. Maybe that's what it is.
I imagine he has to fight someone in the hockey ring as well.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
I can't imagine Dan's much of a fighter either.
No. He just fucking, like, he reminds me of Brock something, a sports commentator that drinks loads. Can't remember his name. It's a good TV show. Hello to everyone in the chat. Thanks for joining us. I've really lost my head now with the start of this. I was all in, and then we bought Games Workshop. Well, specifically, we bought Lenton Lane. Now I don't know what to do. We'll start at the beginning. We did some Warhammer coverage this weekend, which was really fun. For Hammer Time. It was online. It was a TTS event. I loved it. Hopefully we'll do some more sometime soon. Thanks to Grim Slacker for donating 500 bits, and to Jim Inkpen for subscribing as well, which was really fun. And we got to see, I kind of want to save the headline for when Dan comes, but basically headline is, obviously, we got to see the Liberators perform. Nathan, you got to see them play, the redeploying Stormkeep Patrol. Have you got any thoughts on them?
No, they still looked like a decent list, but yeah, they just struggled in that game, in that matchup. Maybe it'll take a bit of play. They're not an auto win, obviously, because they lost. But yeah, I think they'll take a bit of getting used to playing how you're going to play with them. So
they actually beat. They lost 3 times. Well, at least Adam. Now that could be Adam piloting it. Effectively, James, Nathan, you've met Adam Mumford, or no, James, you have. Sorry. Any thoughts on his ability to pilot a competitive Stormcast army?
No comment.
Wow. Wow.
I thought he was. Wasn't he in one of the teams at the?
No, he was a coach.
He was a coach.
Okay.
Yeah,
which I said was because he was too scared to play.
Coltrap, thanks for donating some gift subscription, by the way, to Jim Inkpen. Chris Jr., what up in the chat? I think the meta around Stormcast Turtles is so bad at the minute they aren't good. Yes, so the conversation around them is definitely a thing. We've seen the Stormkeep Patrol. It's one event, Stormkeep Patrol, but normally what we normally see, the kind of when new stuff comes out, it gets picked up and a bunch of people play it, and it either performs like there's 2 kind of versions. It performs kind of okay, and then it scales up and gets better over time as people learn to play it better. Yeah. Or it comes right out the fence and it smashes face all day. We saw that with Flesh Eater Court, Skaven, Slanesh. Like, there's a bunch of different stuff. Change Host with Zinch, Little Chris, you specifically there. And so a whole bunch of people who just come out of the field and just smashed it up. Now, obviously, it's TTS. Sorts of people that are playing TTS, are like who they are, and then in-tournament gamers are who they are. So there's always a bit of a differential. Sometimes there's crossover, sometimes there's not. But, you can draw some valuable information from it. The only thing I've really got to say from the weekend that me and Owen didn't cover earlier today was I just absolutely loved watching some games of Warhammer again, and it makes me want to play loads, and I want to do some more coverage and check out some more games, because it was really, really, really fun, especially watching different people play. Nathan, I don't know if you saw the Iron Guts army play, or you'd have missed it, but I don't know if you watched it back. Stuart with his Iron Guts against another Stormkeep army, but that had 9 Vanguard Raptors. But those Iron Guts just went through Liberators like they were just not there, basically. They just chopped them to pieces, which was awesome. And then we got to see some fun wind-up Archeon and some batter some Skinks, Nath. And the frog went in the sword.
Ah, cool. Which frog? Croak or just an
croak.
arbitrary frog? Ah,
No,
okay.
the croak went straight in. Yeah, and also something that I forgot about, Nathan. Do you remember when we've been playing Age of Sigmar whenever we had the chance over the past year, with and whatnot? Apparently, I can Destiny dice the pink still with the 1 and get D6 back. Never knew.
Yeah, I thought so. I wondered why you didn't do it.
Yeah,
I'm sure I asked you why you weren't doing that.
Because I thought it got FAQ'd.
FAQ'd or something, yeah.
Yeah. So, and it didn't, so even better now. But some big takeaways from the weekend, which we obviously covered on the earlier show today, is Ideth Deacon seemed to have really upscaled. James, you got any thoughts on Turtle Power being stronger?
I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's nice to see another army. Well, it's nice to see an army kind of develop and different models on a table, but it's always a shame when it's an army that probably didn't need help. I mean, there's loads of armies out there, isn't there, that needed more help, I think.
Yeah.
And, yeah, they weren't one of them.
Well, so the real question is as the owner of Games Workshop on Earth 2, are you planning on doing anything with the kind of the turtle meta that might be emerging?
They're currently selling quite well, so no. But in a year's time, I'll make them rubbish, and then probably make the guy with the octopus. Can't remember to bother to learn his name because we've made him rubbish for. Yeah, but he's rubbish at the minute. We'll learn his name when we make him good in a year's time.
Okay, all right, that works.
I'm gonna have painful business transactions now as the owner of a giant company.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Stephen OOS says 60 libs is too many. There's stuff there with one big block and anvils, Judicators backing them up, or Staunch Defender Phoenix as well. You could put that in because obviously it's Stormkeep, and therefore you can ally some stuff. Well, not ally, they can just go straight in. John Anderson, what up? I hope you're well. Dan the Great Gamer Khan, I hope you're really well. The Covens need help. They got a little bit better. They got a little bit better in the Marathi book, but they did also unfortunately lose their city, which is a bit of a shame. Oh no, actually, they kind of gained a new city, I guess.
No, they didn't lose. You can still play Anvil Guard.
Yeah, you can, but they're now like refugee Anvil Guard, aren't they? No jokes. No jokes.
Oh,
Don't
yeah,
want
they can still play though.
All right, so that was Warhammer we've done this week. I've also painted a ton, which has been really fun for me, and I've been putting terrain stuff together for the terrain for the T-Sports Arena, which has been an exciting little project.
Have you been painting models or
painted models? Yeah, here's a painted model. Unfortunately, Nathan, it's a Pew Pew model, but he looks like a little bug. I don't know if you can see him on the screen there. I don't have many Tzeentchian things to paint. I do have my Varangard to paint, which I'd be very excited to do.
How many Varangard do you have?
9 Varangard.
Oh, is that all you get in a list?
Yeah, it's pretty much all you could get in a list. But you could. The really cool thing you obviously could do is you could play Knights of the Empty Throne, so you don't have to So you could potentially take like a block of 6 or even a block of 9, and then another couple 2 3s or something. You could have a bunch of Varangard in a list if you really, really wanted to. And Knights of the Empty Throne is a really, really fun list. Is it top end competitive? No. Could it go 4-1, 3-2, and maybe fucking sneak through a 5-0 one day? Yeah, potentially. But it's super fun. It's got some really fun mechanics. to play with. So that would be a fun thing to put together. But I'm not doing that right now. And mainly they scare me as models. If you looked at the Vanguard models, they're quite intricate.
Yeah, they're cool though. Like I think the Vanguard, like, they look cool. They're probably not as good in game as they look. But you know, if you go in looks over practicality, then they're definitely the right unit for you, I think. So they probably fit you quite well.
Nate, you got any thoughts on the Vanguard?
Guys looks over practicality.
Fucking skipping
yeah,
that.
sure. Have I got any thoughts on Vanguard? Not really.
Whatever. This show has started such a shit show. Go on, just say some words.
No, I don't know much about what they do. They're quite tough. They can fight twice once a game, and that's about all I know. So yeah, I'm sure everybody knows that anyway.
Yeah, it's true.
You'd have to tell me what the Knights of the Empty Throne do. Why?
Well, the main reason you would take it is they've got a command ability where you can pick a unit, and you can roll a dice for each model in the unit. So let's say you had 40 grots, Nathan, on an objective. Yeah,
Mhm.
I'd do a command ability on that unit. Yeah, I'd roll 40 dice, and for every 3+, I think it's 3+. For every 3+, I reduce how much you're holding that objective by that many.
Yeah.
So let's say I rolled, 30 out of the 40, yeah, with 3+. You then are only holding that by 10, right? Now, what's really interesting is if I then kill 20, you have 20 on the objective, but your unit is worth -30 for holding. So you go down into a minus. So even though you've got 20 models on, that my Vanguard unit could hold the objective instead of you, even though it's 3. So it's super, super, super hard to achieve, but it's really, really fun.
Cool.
Yeah. Hey, Big Goldfish, what up? And Canhammer TV, yeah, baby, let's go. So that's really all I've got to talk about hobby-wise. Moving on to news, if you guys are excited about talking about news.
Yeah.
There's two major pieces of news, and the major piece of news is that the Warcry box set, which has gone on. James, have you had the Warcry box set? Is that what
I
I'm talking
do,
about?
yeah.
I don't think I'm talking about the Warcry box set. There's a new Warcry product out sometime soon anyway, or it's already been on pre-order. But effectively, it contains in it all of the new mortal stuff in the index.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense? But all of the content creators aren't allowed to talk about it because it's under embargo.
I imagine so. There's new so there is new books, isn't there? So there's new books for Warcry that come out this weekend because the dice come out too.
They're the ones.
So there is one book for each. So old Warcry, you had to buy a box of cards for Nighthorn, and then some dice and blah blah blah, and a box for whatever else, and then you also had to own a book to get the abilities. So Games Workshop for some reason were nice, and so this time you just buy an old Grand Alliance book. So that's basically what it is. If you think original Age of Sigmar, when you just bought a Grand Alliance book and it had every model in, it's the same thing, but it allows you to use them in Warcry.
Yes, exactly, and it's thank you. Someone in the chat has put out exactly what it is. It's the Tome of Champions. So that this Saturday we'll know what all the names of the new Sinesh units are, even if we don't necessarily know the model. So we'll know the range, which is quite interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that's some hot gossip. So it does mean that it's a huge and significant release, which because of whatever reason isn't out, be it COVID, be it supply chain issues, be it Brexit, be it who knows. So that's a piece of news, and that's really fun because it will be fun just generally guessing what all those units' names are. Maybe because that's coming up, it means Games Workshop is going to show off all those models in the next couple of days, right?
Yes,
So we
sooner
could have that
rather
this
than
week.
later.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So it looks like they're in control of what's going on.
Exactly. On Earth 2, James, how would you deal with that?
Add 30% on all the prices. I'd be like, people are going to want them.
Yeah.
Put the price up.
Yeah, the Sinesh Cyberites is the name of the faction. Thanks, AOS Pete. Loads of love to you. And thanks for the invite as well. That's super nice here. I'd be chill for that. So that's the Sinesh news, which is pretty cool. It means that the Slaanesh book, as prophesized on this show, is a whole big book of models. It's a whole faction of mortal Slaanesh. Nathan, you got any thoughts on a mortal Slaanesh line Twitch chat? Got any thoughts?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, Slaanesh were obviously top dog for a while, then have dropped out of the top, even though they're still pretty competitive. But that was all around the demons, so yeah, it's going to be cool to see what the mortals can do now.
Yeah. And a whole new model range is also going to be very good.
There's someone new in the chat. Never seen him.
Is he ready? Is he ready to rock?
Well, he's in the chat.
Let's try and add him in. Okay, so that's a piece of news. We'll wait to see if we get Dan in the chat before we do the rest of the news, because we can't leave without him. The newest Marine book was printed in the UK. Yeah, so most of the new books, by the way, are printed in the UK, not printed in China as previously. Because of the Sylvaneth debacle, I think we've seen them jump ship because it was stuck on a boat. Go on.
You'd think realistically, wouldn't you? They should have just left that Sylvaneth book in China.
You think they should have left it in China?
Yeah, you'd have been better off with the ones before.
It's true. No one disagrees. Like,
just leave it there. Maybe that was the issue. They were like, it took us ages to get it here, and it was shit.
I can't. You know, in the way that it was released. So, if you guys don't know this story, the Sylvaneth book was leaked accidentally online, but not online as in like someone took photos or something. Games Workshop basically just published it to iTunes, and then people bought it, screenshotted all the pages, and then were like, "Lol." They legally bought it, then Games Workshop took it off sale, so it was no longer there. So basically, the entire book was released before the book was out, which was a pretty had it been. I'm trying to think what armies have been out recently. Had it been the Tzeentch one or the Seraphon one, everyone would have been playing games or building lists. There would have been a furore of loads of fun. Do you know what I mean? Because both those books were super strong and really good. Whereas the Seraphon one was so bad, it was so disappointing for everyone that it was like this window that gives up. Like, oh, by the way, guys, Sylvaneth now. Everyone's like, nah. I kind of wish we'd have just ignored it and be like, this book doesn't count. We'll stick with the old book, but that didn't happen. Anyway, I think they just did the China printing because they had so many books released in rapid succession. Now the releases are slow; they don't need to outsource. I think they probably also don't mind using whatever. Surely, whatever. Yeah. Where were we? Is Dan in the chat? Is Dan getting in the chat or not?
I don't know. He was definitely in the chat room.
Okay. All right. That's not useful. Nath, what was it? You got any thoughts on what I just said?
He said 15 minutes apparently.
About where things are made in China and wherever.
Yeah, I knew that. Any of
that? No. Not really. I mean, I've got no idea where, if I wanted something made, where I'd get it made. If I can't make it myself, fuck knows.
That's my main problem. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, all right. So that's the first. So the Cyberites news or the Slaanesh news is the first bit. Then the other bit of news that's out is the Khainite Shadow Stalkers. So James, you're excited by these? They're in your Warcry box.
They are indeed.
The points have come out for those officially, and they're 100 points.
Yeah, nuts.
Yeah. Have you? Do you know what they do specifically? Have you got the War Scroll to hand by any chance?
I can very easily have it to hand.
Okay. All right. Well, Nathan, have you seen what they do yet? The little Shadow Elves.
Yeah, they're the ones that just teleport around. They've got a few attacks, a few decent attacks, if I remember.
Yep.
Just a great little objective grabbing unit and, very flexible little unit if you need for bouncing around and doing stuff.
So they're innately -1 to hit, very strong.
Yeah.
Innately. They have a teleport that they can do every turn if they want to, also strong, which is good. They're not very tanky. They've got a 5-up save, but that -1 to hit hopefully will help them. And then they've got some really, really positive melee attacks. James, you got it now? The melee attacks. Do you want to tell us what they are?
So there is... So the Shroud Queen, who's the super pretty model, kind of floating in amongst all the cloth. So she's the Shroud Queen. She has Umbral Blades and Cursed Missiles. And has 3 wounds. So there are 9 model unit, but they are 12 wounds. So they're weapons. So they have Assassin's Blades, 2 attacks, 4s to hit, 3s to wound, no rend, 1 damage. So 2 attacks each, so 8, 16 attacks. And then the Shroud Queen has Umbral Blades, so 3 attacks, 3s to hit, 3s to wound, -1 D3 damage.
Yes, now that's the one, because it's mainly ablative wounds for the character who's like pretty strong at potentially putting out some output, really. And you could have 2 of those in unit. You can only go to a max unit size of 18, but really it's a teleporting unit. Now, of course, it's a Daughters of Cain unit, so you can take it in Cobra Kai City, which is called Hagkar. I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, you can take that.
Harkuron.
Harkuron.
Honestly, I've got nothing in the brain pan today. And then you can, obviously, you can add all the buffs on as well. So some people think it's really good. Some people think in medium. I think it's pretty strong. It's really good access to a really strong unit for Daughters of Cain, and ultimately Cities of Sigmar if you're playing Harkuron. So that's really useful as well. And it's nice to get some points. Does point to the fact that Games Workshop, as always, undervalue teleporting.
It's nuts that a unit with a guaranteed every turn pre-built-in teleport is 100 points, because it's 12 wounds on a 5-up save at -1 to hit that teleport every turn. And I think, do they all? It's unrelated. No, so they don't all have a shooting attack, but still, it's just nuts.
Yeah. So some people in the chat happy with them, some people not happy with them. So it's nice to see it move all around. Relmar Winters, big love to you. Hope you're well, you fucking legend. He says
Sorry,
go on.
I'm just going to correct myself. They do all have a shooting attack.
They
so
do.
It's
And
9
they do mortals,
shooting
don't they?
attacks on a 6 to hit. So 9 shots, only 6-inch range, so you couldn't teleport and shoot. 4s to hit, but 6s are mortals. But it's just that teleport. So strong.
Compared to tree revs, nowhere near. Tree revs aren't as good. Shadow warriors aren't as good. Nath, how would you feel about being able to have a unit like that inside a Gitz army or a Cities army?
Yeah, I think any army would be happy to have a unit like that. Really, yeah, or a couple of units like that floating around doing stuff. Yeah, they're just obviously they're cheap enough. You could just use them as a screen if you needed to, but they've got loads of other uses for other stuff. It's just they're really good, threatening back objectives. Messing around with things like crawlers and stuff like that. Yeah, they're great.
Really good. Conan Cameron's pointing out that they're like Ungor Raiders and a Beast Lord, but only in one unit. But yeah, it's strong, right? It's strong and it's cool. So that's another good piece of news coming out. So if you're a DOK player or you like those models, they're strong and usable in the game. I think there's always like a fine balancing act, isn't there, with new releases? And it's tough to talk about on this show sometimes, because obviously you want something to be playable and good. But then the big question is like, is it playable and too good? And that's a really hard line to try and draw when you're analysing these things before they go on the table. I don't think they're too good, but I do think that they make other stuff not look strong, which leads us really nicely onto the conversation today, which is about the winter points FAQ and what things we would like to see it for winter. For Age of Sigmar, like points rebalances or war scroll changes, and I guess some of that conversation has to be ensconced in the idea that we know that we're going to get some war scroll changes or allegiance ability changes for some of the armies, like we've seen with Marathi. It's quite amazing what's happened with the Marathi book. To people who are talking about Liberators and people who are talking about Stormkeep Patrol. Idneth, I know Idneth were already getting a look in, but now Idneth are just playing a different game. If anything else comes out of the Marathi book, you now will play games against turtles. And yeah, it might suck to play up against 2 unrendable eels, but there'll be a turtle on the board, and in my opinion, that's a win for the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think Idneth, obviously a strong army anyway, and they're proper gatekeepers against the shooting the so-called shooting meta, aren't they? I think.
Do you want to explain how?
Well, obviously they've got the rule where you have to shoot the closest thing, the closest Ideneth unit or their allies to you. So it just takes all the flexibility out of a shooting army, and in some cases it can nullify a shooting phase totally with things like the Cloak of Midnight and stuff like that. So I think you'll see people that go to tournaments will be less inclined to take hardcore shooting lists, because they'll be like, well, what happens, when I get to the top tables and then run into an Ideneth army? I'm going to be stuffed. So you're better off taking something that doesn't rely just on the shooting, because there's an army out there that will just pretty much put a stop to you.
It's true, and I think that's a solid point. And I think maybe one of the reasons you saw at the online event of the weekend, less shooting generally. So just this one release from the Marathi book may have generally changed up the meta massively. So when we go into this winter FAQ, we do have to talk about some of those things. Now, when we talk about the winter FAQ and what we'd like to see, there are two conversations all the time. There's external parity, and then there's internal parity. So there's how books perform against each other, and what we want is the very best books to get a little bit worse, and we want the very worst books to get a little bit better, and then we kind of want the middle to all kind of coalesce together. What we don't want is everyone trying to get pushed up to the top, because that becomes an arms race, and eventually you end up with the very top being way too good. I think that feels right to me. Nathan, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think you're probably right. If everything becomes too powerful, sometimes the game loses some of its nuances and tactics, because those little things that you can use to turn a game, just they won't be turning games, because you need a bag full of fucking sledgehammers instead of lots of little bits and pieces. Yeah.
Is that a building reference? Like, is there like some jobs where all you use is sledgehammers, and then sometimes you got to turn up with a torque key, like a welding wedge?
Please don't stop. Carry on.
What about a plaster shifter? That also probably sounds like a useful tool. Any of those?
Sounds great. Yeah. I've 100%. You nailed it. Yeah, you hit hit the nail on the head there with your whatever the hell it was that you were saying. Those words, them words that you used.
I don't want to be rude. I don't want to be rude to anyone in the chat, especially my friends Stephen and Pete, who I know are in the chat. But Nathan did describe his hammer as an Irish screwdriver the other day. And listen, that's on him. Yeah, Nathan, I'm calling you out. I'm calling you out. Yeah.
I'm over here, lads.
James, you got any thoughts on making shitty armies better or good armies worse?
I think it'd be nice. It'd be nice to see some balance in. Like, I think one of the biggest issues is I understand that there's always going to be some parity in power, and I either think, for me, Games Workshop either need to kind of understand that someone's going to take, a weaker army to enjoy playing the game a particular way, but that also what you could probably do better having is some armies maybe that are strong, and then like just a muddy middle ground, rather than, I think what we see at the minute is some armies that are super strong, a middle ground, and then some armies that are just like utter horrible to play. And I think it really sucks when you're one army, or the army you love the aesthetic of the most is that army that is not fun to play. However, I also think you were wrong, because you said there was two conversations about what we want to see.
Oh yeah.
And you got it wrong, because actually the conversation is, what do we want Games Workshop here and now to produce in this winter FAQ, and what do we want Earth 2 Games Workshop to do with their winter FAQ
in their parallel world?
I think we should call this Earth 2 Winter FAQ once. And I might, if I like them in the chat, I'll just do it. Complain Earth 2. I'm gonna try and get Owen to hold any more Warhammer tournaments he holds in Earth 2. I'll rent him Warhammer World. I own it now.
Oh my god, this is the worst. Winter FA2. Right, okay. So let's talk about some. But so before we talk about, and then so that's external parity. Then internal parity. You've got units that are sucky, and then you've got units that are good. And you would like probably just the units that are sucky to come up and see and be better, like we've seen with the turtle and like we've seen with the shark for Idneth Deepkin, and even the snake ladies from Daughters of Cain have also come up as well. Idolaters, I know you're over there shouting like, "I've made chariots a bit better," and the answer is no, you haven't. Yeah, you naughty, terrible thing.
Every time I read that, I don't even know what to call it, a part of allegiance or whatever. Every time I read that Idolaters one, it's just worse.
Yeah, it does get worse.
Do you know, like when you see like a card from a little kid and you read it and you're like, oh, this is really cute, and then you look at it again and you're like, oh, it is really cute, but some of their letters are backwards. And then the third time you read it, you're like, I'm just going to put this in the bin. That's how I feel about that thing. The first time when you read it out, I was like, this could be fun because chariots. And then I read it again myself later and I was like, this could never be good. And then the third time I read it, I was like, I don't want to read this again.
Welcome to my life and reading Teclis's War Scroll, like every time. Right, okay, so let's talk about this because there's some big suggestions in the chat. So those are the two main conversations, and then there are also other conversations like, do you think that they should, via the Winter FAQ, change how scoring works? I think that sort of stuff is probably unlikely. They used to make a mission statement that the Winter FAQ was to rebalance and readdress the game. That's what they always said. Well, that's what they said previously. Whether or not that is there now, I mean, they were lying then, so we can't hold them to it now. So it doesn't really matter. But we're going to have these conversations anyway. So there's been some big conversations already in the chat. One of those ones being teleports, all setups out of combat to be made as a retreat. Thanks, that's from Stephen, which is a big suggestion initially. So that would mean any unit that teleports, basically, that started in combat then teleported out, it would count as a retreat. There are some notable examples at the minute of things that doesn't happen to. Nathan, how would you feel about that?
Fine. Yeah. I mean, all of my armies, like the Gits, they can't retreat out of combat. They can't teleport out of combat anyway. Same with the Ironjaws. So, when I hear that other armies can do that, I'm like, fucking bastards.
I think
sneaky fellas.
It's a really interesting one, isn't it? And I know, I guess because I've been looking at them recently, but because I've been building Skaven and nosing at War Scrolls and looking at abilities, there's that quite interesting things that clan rats can retreat and charge, as long as they have a banner.
The banner or the musician, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the first thing that goes in my pants if I'm fighting Skaven. Yeah.
But I think it's quite a cool rule because they're kind of cowards, and then they start legging it, and then they see like a Grey Seer or Thanquol, and they go, "Oh, he's scarier," and off they go back to fight. And I think narratively, it's quite a good rule, and they're also kind of a pants unit. Like they're not particularly good. Like the old skink rule where they could retreat instead of fighting, I think kind of made sense because they were legging it because they weren't particularly strong, powerful, or whatever. I think the issue is, isn't it? Like if you've got a giant gunship, it just disappears and comes back. Or if you're like, oh, here's 40 marauders, so I'll teleport them, and then I'll teleport them 9 inches behind you, and then they'll still charge again. I think it diminishes that kind of risk reward, doesn't it? Where you're like, I'm gonna try and expend this unit to hold someone up. If someone can just teleport out, it's almost painful.
It's really annoying. The movement. I think I said today. I can't remember what chat I was in. I think I was I was in maybe the Zinch chat or something. Someone was talking to me, and I was like, don't walk anywhere in Age of Sigmar. You're not a poor person. Yeah, you teleport. right? In Age of Sigmar, there's like all the teleporters, and then there's just the lads who don't have the finances to support themselves for the teleport. They're just slogging across the board, and it's just not fair. Like, it's just not okay. So I think a structural change like that would make a load of sense. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that people are suggesting in the chat as well. Make it so at -1 to hit on engaged shooting, represent it harder in combat to reload and draw. I think that makes sense. You know, like you're locked in combat, a shooting unit's locked in combat, and now you're -1 to shoot because you're engaged in combat and you shouldn't be able to be as good a shooter. I like that. I think that makes a bunch of sense. I think a lot of people generally not overly happy with shooting because it's the ability to project power anywhere on the board, effectively. Not anywhere, but most places on the board, which is why I think people don't like the teleporting as much either, because I do feel like it's the movement and combat that really encapsulates what's so good about the game. Now, obviously, that's a personal preference, but Nathan, you and me have been playing this game since like day one. There's been a lot more teleporting, a lot more movement in the game, and obviously a lot more ranged output. How do you feel about that? Like constructively, do you feel like that is a move towards the negative? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I wouldn't be sad if teleporting was just gone altogether. To be honest, yeah, I'll just give those units the ability to fly if you want them to be able to do sneaky maneuvers. So, but you still limit the amount of movement they have, so that the movement phase becomes a bit more important.
I personally, I'm with you. If I was to write like a wish list, teleporting gone would be into my wish list. I don't mind retreats and charges. I think that's interesting. I like the idea of like hitting and moving away. You've already got fly. I think I'd also like to. I mean, these are big changes which we're not going to see in the winter FAQ. I'd also like to see no shooting beyond 18 inches, unless it's something like a war machine. Like, I don't get how a weedy little shit elf, right?
Longbow, mate.
Longbow. It doesn't
You
matter.
need muscles
How's he got the physical? How's he got the physical strength to draw that bow? Yeah.
Goes and shoots every Sunday. Goes and shoots outside every Sunday. 180 meters a longbow fires. Just Google that. Could be a lie. I know all about bow crime from this show. Yeah,
but this is all this show gives you is bow crime. I'm going to see what everyone in the chat says about, before we get on to shooting, see what everyone says about teleporting. Because Mere Mouse, one of my favourite people in the world, says you're all wrong. Teleporting is ace. Stop being wrong. So just make sure that's in there. Little Chris says teleporting should be gone. I'm okay with deep strike though. Yeah, I think that's a different mechanic ultimately. And I think that's interesting. And if you were to push me, I probably wouldn't mind there being teleporting, but it be locked hard, like you see with Skaven to their gnaw holes and Sylvanet to their trees. Like if it was in situ places that you knew existed, I would.
Well, no, you make it proper dangerous. On a 4-up, you teleport to the realm of chaos.
Oh yeah, do you remember when that happened with the realm gates? That was so fucking good. Yeah,
and not on a 1. Do it on a 4-up. Proper make them fucked if they do it.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. I'm into that. So like, if you teleport, just any teleport is now just on a 4-up. You're in the realm of chaos.
Yeah. You fucked off. You're in the wrong realm. You've teleported into deep space. Good luck, mate.
I guess it's the teleporting equivalent of that last tequila shot before you forgot what happened. Yeah.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's what teleporting is. Just a load of shots. See where you wake up. Hope it was in the right place.
What in all of the good fucks is going on with that?
Oh, hold on. Let's get him in. 1 second.
While you get Dan in, because there was a comment in chat that I wanted to draw on that doesn't hold any relevance. Mm-hmm. But Swaggy Shadow 21, I was just looking through the comments. I'm like, oh, these are good. And then I was like, oh man, Games Workshop have broken this man.
Why?
So all he wants is 1 rend on Chaos Warriors. And I was like, do you know what? I'll give you it. I'll just do it. I'll just go on every Chaos thing and just add the 1 on, because they'll still be shit.
Now, some of you, and Dan, you won't know what this gag is unless you've been listening the whole time. But at the start of the show...
Oh, no. Are we talking about Earth 2?
Yeah, Earth 2.
Oh!
Yeah.
Oh,
James
yeah.
bought Games Workshop on Earth 2, and now the Honest
Oh my
Wargamer owns Games Workshop on Earth 2. You have to say the 2
great.
bit quietly.
Can I be the minister for propaganda? I just feel like like silencing the naysayers. I'd love a secret police related role.
Oh my god! Okay.
I
Not
just
traditionally
wanna-
the good guys, Dan.
Well, no, I know, but Earth 2, right? Obviously, this is where we get to flip around and do the opposite, right? And I feel like Sunshine and Rainbows is getting old. What I would like to be is, like in our world, we have this lovely dichotomy. We've got this discourse between what we want and like what we're going to be talking about today. We'll be saying about our hopes and dreams and things we'd like done better. I would like for Earth 2 to be the world where we do it our way, and then anyone who disagrees with us in a war dolly capacity, I make them disappear.
Oh my god!
This
On
got
Earth
super
2.
dark, super fast.
Look, I just had to give a lot of blood, and I haven't eaten or drank anything yet today, so there's a lot of me missing.
Do you think that's what happens in the real Games Workshop HQ? And they're like, "Are we the baddies?" Jez,
That's
are we the baddies?
Liberator and Dan talking.
People are already signing up.
Yeah.
for
Dan,
Earth
you've got
2.
staff.
What? Sorry,
What people in
yeah,
the chat are signing up to be in Dan's secret army in Earth
Yeah, look
2.
at this.
Oh
no, I
my
believe
God.
the term that I would like to use is secret police.
Do you know what they could be?
What?
They could be liberators.
No, we're the opposite of that. We are the literal opposite of what's the opposite of liberators? And we're that. We're the
Oppressors.
oppressors.
They're also liberators, yeah.
They're also
The,
liberators.
the opposite is liberators.
Yeah, we're reverse liberators. Yeah, good, great. I'm so glad to know that that's where we're at. Good.
The Danquisition.
Yeah.
No one needs that. Welcome, Dan. So we're
The
talking...
Gestapo. I'm about that.
to keep you up to date with where we are, we have just started talking about what we'd like to see from the Age of Sigmar FAQ. And I think we've all talked about, and we've said, one of the issues that we see, potentially, some people not agreeing, specifically Mere Mouse, is any who then wrote "Bring Back Gulags." So maybe we don't listen to him in any way. Yeah, right.
Yeah, why bring them back? They're already here.
Yeah, exactly. He's right. You know, let's go to China, and then the what was the fucking word I was saying? So teleports. Teleports are a bit of an issue.
Yeah.
And I think,
Yep.
like we've said, like wish listing never happened. Do away with teleports. What are your thoughts?
I would just make them less reliable. Like I think that the concept of them is great, but when you've got them in the pocket every single time, it's not worth it. I don't mind them. I would change it to like on a 4-up, like
Do you know
across
what we could do, actually?
What?
You could give every army one teleport spell, cast on a 12.
Cast on a 12. Some armies, that's really easy to choose. Each can just choose that result, James.
It's fine. It's using all their dice.
I don't mind, like personally, I don't mind it as a game mechanic because I find it exciting. I love when I know that my opponent say has a unit that can do that, I'm thinking about it, I'm planning for it, and I'm trying to tactic around it and like eliminate that threat or mitigate that threat. When an entire army can do it, I'm like, I don't love that, even in the slightest. And when an army not only can do that but relies on that, that's when it gets me down. Now, let's say that Shadowstalkers.
Would you not equate that to? Sorry, would you not equate that to being excited about potentially having your house burgled while you're out? You know, like it's like, oh, isn't it excited that something fun could happen to me later? But the answer is it's not fun.
Well, see, and that's where for me, it's if it was they happened on a 4-up, I'd be like the 1 to 3 is I'm at home with a double barrel shotgun.
Okay.
So there's a chance that my opponent's like, oh, I'm going to do some janky stuff. My elves are going to pop up in your bum, and then they roll a 1 to 3, and the elves are just like, yeah, nah. I think that there'd be something in that, or even if teleporting meant that they couldn't do anything for the rest of the turn.
So they couldn't charge.
Yeah, like there just needs to be some kind of risk
Or if
to
they-
reward.
They
Because at the moment,
teleported. Sorry, Karen.
no, oh, just at the moment, there's no risk. It's just
Yeah.
all reward. Sorry, Nate.
Nathan's make a suggestion for that.
If they teleported the way dwarves used to teleport, take 2 turns to do it, my friends.
Yeah.
Even I think that's quite an interesting idea. So AOS Pete in the chat spot, teleport could be like the Doom wheel. If you roll a 1 on the dice, your opponent chooses where you go.
Yes. Yeah, I'm down for that. Big down
Yep.
for that in a big way. Yeah, that would work really well for me. That'd be fun. All right, so teleporting is something I think there's a lot of conversation, at least in the chat and from us. We'd like to see something done about. I very much doubt that that's what we'll see from the Winter FAQ. At best, we'll see some points changes. And then with the lack of tournament data, I'm doing this in quotation marks, by the way, because when LLV would do the tournament stats, they would just blanket ignore them because the stats were wrong. So the very concept that they look at tournament stats is insane, and they don't, I don't know what they do. Like, I got no positive words, so I'm only going to keep talking. The what
I
so many
just like to
wrong
get
things
clear.
in my head. Go on,
Earth
Dan.
2, where do we sit on teleporting? Because I just need to know. There's a lot of people saying different things in the chat, and James, I'd just love to know which of them you want to be made disappeared.
I'm gonna make AOS Pete head of teleporting rules
Great.
for the next 5 years. But if he makes a rule we don't like at any point, then he's yours, Dan.
Great.
Okay.
Okay.
And we're gonna go with
Why
his
are you
rules for
sending to the
now.
secret police?
So AOS Pete, you can add that. You can add that to your
Congratulations,
Twitter bio.
AOSP. You're now the head of teleporting.
I'm gonna
Teleport
change
in.
my Twitter's
Earth 2.
I'm gonna change it to the head of the not so secret police because I'm gonna have a badge. We'll all get, you know what? Anyone who's a part of the Den Stapo. Actually, we probably shouldn't call it that. I'm gonna get we'll get some like jackets made up with like your name across the back, and our symbol will just be like a black bag over a head. It's gonna be awesome.
Wow, none of this is okay. I'd like
I'm-
to categorically state the Honest Wargamer in no way supports fascist authoritarian regimes, and this is just a bit of satire. Some of you might not understand that in 2020, which is super okay, because Hitler did just get voted into Nambian court. He did. I told you this last week, or did I tell you this on Thursday? Adolf Hitler has been voted into government in Namibia. True story.
What?
You can Google it if you want to Google it. If you don't believe me, Google it. Just Google it right
I'm
now.
not
Take a
saying I
moment.
don't believe you, but
Just Google it. Take a minute. Come on. I'll just wait.
Anyway,
Podcasters love you loads.
I would be. Honestly, I don't know what this update's going to change for a lot of that stuff because, like you said, Rob, what data have we seen that it could be drawn from?
Well, no, but they didn't listen to data or data before, so it doesn't really matter. Right. Okay. So next up,
How dare you take a shot at my accent? Australians in the chat, rise up against Christmas Rob and his hatred of the way we speak.
Yeah, James I'm correct. I'm correct. Aren't I?
I completely missed that.
What I told about the governmental position in Namibia.
Oh yeah, you were. Yeah. I mean, it's a man named after him, which is weird. And he has. There was 2 days ago.
Did I say it was the Adolf Hitler, or did
No,
I say
you
Adolf
didn't.
Hitler got voted in?
My favourite is the first article I get from Business Today, which I'm imagining is not a very hot business press from this article. The headline is Adolf Hitler, in quotations, wins Namibia's local election.
Namibia.
Oh, sorry. Says no plans for world domination.
Yeah, yeah, that's what they all say at the start,
There you
James.
go.
That's what Dan said a minute ago. He's like, secret police. Yeah, fucking Beer Mouse in the chat was already talking about a gulag. It's outrageous. Anyway, let's talk about shooting. Yeah, shooting.
Yep.
Now, shooting has been there's been a hot topic for Age of Sigmar. Be it Seraphon, be it Flamers, be it obviously Sentinels. You know, there's a whole bunch of gentlemen out there only taking 20 or 30 Sentinels, and we all think they're legends. They've not gone for the full 70 or 80. Shooting, I remember when Kurnoth Hunters came out, they had 30-inch bows, one shot, yeah, or Skyfires. They were a threat at one point, a little bit, because you could get pluses to hit stacked around them.
It's a
So that
long
was
time
positive.
ago, that though,
It was
wasn't
a long
it?
time ago in ages past. But now we've got some pretty prodigious shooting coming out of some units. Specifically, I'm trying to think of some very offensive units. Obviously, skinks, handgunners, Mortek crawlers, flamers, sentinels. These are some of the kind of like the big hitters. Have you got any thoughts about Nathan? You got any thoughts about shooting range being reduced? I wouldn't mind seeing shooting over 18 inches being like -1 to hit or something like that. Do you know what I mean? Or if you moved, you -1 to hit if you try to shoot. I think that would be good as well, because a lot of these units, you sometimes see it's 18-inch shooting, and then you definitely know that Games Workshop have forgot that they can then move and shoot. Like, it's definitely like the case. They're shooting 18-inch guns, like, cool, but they've moved 6 inches beforehand. They're like, oh, it's 24 actually, mate. They're like, actually, you could make them run and shoot. Like, oh, actually, it's really far. Are you sure this is what you want? This hasn't given them any minuses to hit. You moving 8 inches, running another 6 inches, yeah, at full pelt, and then firing at the same amount. No problem. Nate, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think people are obviously a bit miffed when you play against shooting, which is interesting, because you got games where it just revolves around shooting, doesn't it? In that space game that you guys play sometimes.
Yeah. What about the space game?
Yeah, don't they all shoot each other in that game?
They do. So you cannot shoot into combat in the space game.
Okay.
So that's important, and also you can't shoot characters either. Where there you go. James has got a picture of his deed, but only Games Workshop behind him.
It's us. What?
That's what we own. We own Games Workshop, Dan, on Earth.
Two.
Okay, let's. You know what? I'm going to buy a little bit of property on the moon, because if Cyberpunk and all of that has taught me anything, it's that if we're going to have a place where we put the people that we don't like, James, it should be in the moon. Correct? Mind Fury?
On Moon 2.
I don't want that title. I do not want that title. I reject it.
Isn't that what they call the head of the Games Workshop these days? And yes, I just accidentally said the Games Workshop as well. Like I'm like, oh yes, honey, could you set me up with a profile on that the Facebook thing?
Dan,
anyway.
listen, I'm not listening to you about geography. I still know that you're a crisis actor from the fake Australia. Yeah, that doesn't really exist because the Earth is indeed flat. Right, okay. So listen, I'm just seeing what everyone else is saying in the chat about shooting specifically. Nate, did you have any thoughts on the shooting?
Well, I mean, yeah, it is something that people get miffed about, but it's part of the game, and obviously the shooting units are normally fairly crap at fighting, so as long as you can get your grubby mitts on them, you can normally give them a good bashing, but it's just getting there and grabbing hold of them. So, it would be nice to sort of for it to be balanced so that you can have shooting units and they have a role in the game, but you don't want them to be a dominant role in the game, because then it does sort of lead to negative play experiences, but then you don't want them to be negative for people that want to take a shooting army. So
I think one of the things that 40k does super well now, and this has got to be my hopes for Age of Sigmar 3. I feel like we're going to see some very systemic changes in Age of Sigmar 3. We're going to see terrain maps. There's a whole bunch of indications as to why. Look at the new Gargant book and the keyword rubble. We're going to get keyword terrain, which is excellent. We're going to get some pretty prodigious terrain as well, I think. Not like new terrain. I don't know anything about kits or anything like that. That's not what I'm talking about. I think we're going to see maps. We'll also end up with a smaller board, and a smaller board is generally really positive, obviously, for combat. There's a load of shooting in 40k, and because of the density of the terrain and the ability for it to completely block line of sight, combat has seen a significant uptick and in its efficacies, which I can't say that word. It's like a genuinely like good thing now, which is cool, and that's good. So, and I personally think that the terrain is something that really needs to be addressed in Age of Sigmar. but it isn't being addressed right now. This won't be the winter thing. That'll be Age of Sigmar 3. Also, smaller boards in Age of Sigmar 3 as well. Which, does anyone want to talk about that, or has anyone got anything to say about that?
Well,
now,
I just wanted to quickly throw on to shooting. I've seen a lot of people in the chat saying like, oh, and it's a slippery slope heading back towards the old Warhammer Fantasy Battle days, which is you'd be -1 to hit if you moved, -1 to hit if you're more than half, like if you're at more than half range, if you've got a 24-inch bow and you're firing at something 18 inches away. I personally, of all of those, there's one that I don't mind the look of in shooting, which is -1 to hit if you moved. And the only reason I say that is that this is a game about movement, like movement phase and the charge phase are the two most important because that's when you capture and take objectives.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think for shooting units to be able to have the flexibility to move or to move and run and then still shoot and do all of these things, that is insane strength for them. Whereas if you're a shooting unit and there has to be some kind of a drawback for having moved, I think that would be it. So for me, I don't mind that. I don't think a lot has to happen. I think for me, the bigger picture is that the shooting units have so much tactical flexibility because of that. You suddenly make it that they're -1 to hit if they move, and you find yourself in the position where you're like, "Ooh, do I move on to that objective, or do I do this? Do I back off to get more distance from that unit and then shoot it, or do I stay still to probably get more hits and shoot it?"
That's a really good point. Like,
yeah.
I like the idea. I like the idea of like you stand still, like we've seen with the Stormkeep stuff. You stand still, you get +1 to your save. I like that idea. Like you're like bracing. That would be a fun little mechanic to have universally. Now, obviously, I say that without like amending any war scrolls or points, but just to kind of like to be involved. I think that sounds like quite a fun idea.
I think,
go on.
I was just going to say, while we're still on shooting, I think it's really interesting, isn't it? Because what we see is across various game systems, people address it in a different way. But it's interesting that Games Workshop don't even address kind of the same issues in their own games with the same thing. So like Lord of the Rings, obviously they didn't want everyone to just play shooting armies. Don't know if anyone's ever played before, but basically 33% of your army can shoot. That's the end of it. I mean, realistically, if you wanted to change shooting or remove people from just playing shooting armies, you could just add it as a war scroll keyword and have, battle line, something, shooting, cool. In a 2000 list game, you can have 2 shooting units max. Done.
I also think, like, just to I've seen a lot of people point out Sentinels in the chat. I would, and I don't know how the three of you guys think, I would remove them from the conversation about shooting. The problem with Sentinels is they're underpointed. No rules change is going to change that.
I think their war scroll is also just abusive. Like it's
exactly
like you're like ignore line of sight kind of makes sense. You're like, cool, put that on like an 18-inch shot or something. And I do get it. Like it's an arrow arcing through the sky, but like it's indeterminate. Like it should hit harder. Like it's indeterminate, right? Like like you're shooting at stuff you can't see. How are you that accurate?
You should lose, or the mortal wounds can't be done if you're firing indirectly. But at the end of the day, a conversation about how you change the shooting phase or how you change shooting to make the game a more positive and balanced experience, I wouldn't focus on that one war scroll because that one war scroll is underpointed and bonkers good. So if you do something that's going to bring that war scroll down, you're going to absolutely snip the balls off of every other shooting unit in the game completely. So that's why for me, I when I'm thinking about the shooting phase, I actually remove them because they're damaging to that view because it's too hard to find a way to balance them that wouldn't just 86 every other shooting unit in the game.
I see what you mean. Yeah, it's a good point. Someone was bringing up the point Travis was talking about Skaven. And how Skaven aren't overly, they're not necessarily like smashing tournaments all the time. And some of their key strong units, obviously Storm Fiends, they're a thing. And there's some shooting there, but they don't necessarily. But I feel like some of this is approached with the core. I mean, we're talking about the core changes we might see in the FAQ. We're not going to see any of this. We're not going to see any of this in the winter FAQ. So maybe we should kind of like pigeonhole it. But it's a fun conversation, so I don't see why not. And it takes us into the conversation for next year, right? Like the smaller boards, it will be a massive change. And it will, like, it's 25% smaller. Like, it's big. That's a big change, and you really will notice it, especially as the 40k terrain density is, so it's 25% smaller. So normally at an Age of Sigmar tournament, you play with like 8 to 10 pieces of terrain, yeah, and that's on a board that's bigger. Now on a 40k board, you play with 12 pieces of terrain on a 25% smaller board. So it's just a lot denser, and now there's a lot more shooting in that as well. But it doesn't mean you can't do something about it. Again, leave Sentinels out of the conversation because they're just a shitty unit that's badly designed. And then we'll move on. And I think that'll be a good place for the game to be. I'm actually very excited about that. If that's what comes to fruition in Age of Sigmar 3, I think it's necessary. But I don't want to see stuff where you like. I don't know. I don't know. What do you think, Nath and James? You saw this at the Super Series. I do like the idea of creating like kill lanes and avenues blocked up by terrain. Because the terrain rules are janky and weird at the minute. You know, units running halfway up, standing halfway on the side. I think that would be it'd be fun. Nate, you got any thoughts on that?
On getting terrain, how terrain interacts with the games at the moment. Yeah. I mean, at the moment, there are some bad feel bad moments when people balance their eel on top of a pointy little stick somewhere and say, "Yeah, I'm going to charge you from here," and stuff like that. So, it would be good if that sort of stuff was addressed. And yeah, so if they're going to classify terrain and put it into and give it roles and stuff, because at the moment we've got the mystical terrain. I was going to ask the tournament yesterday. We saw set terrain maps, but they weren't using?
No, they weren't using the mystical terrain. No.
The rules. Okay, fair enough.
I feel like there's we talked about this in real person a couple of months ago, didn't we? I feel like there's a general trend towards people kind of ignoring the mystical terrain push nowadays. I don't know if that's
it's too big.
Do you think so?
I love playing with it. Don't get me wrong. And that's when I say this is coming from someone who, when I go up to play someone at a tournament, and if it's the pack says, use the rules if you want to, if you both agree not to, you don't have to. I always rock up and I'm like, I'd rather play with them. However, now that it's gone from just 6 to 12, like now that it's becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, the amount you need to remember, it's more fluff in the game. When it was just six effects that I had to think about, I was across it. Now that you're asking me to do 12, you're just adding more, and every time you're adding more, it's getting more complex. It's one more thing between me and playing the game, as opposed to enhancing the game. And
I would argue, I'd argue, I completely agree with that. I think what they did was they shot themselves in the foot when they put terrain, they put the realms in. You know, because it used to be I would rock up, I'd roll some dice, I'd be like, this is arcane, this is thing, and that would be a map that you'd learn. You know, and then now then for a while in tournaments they're like, hey, there's all this stuff. By the way, also here's 6 new spells at command ability, a bunch of other stuff, and you're like, oh, do you know what? That's a lot I can't be arsed with. You know, and I think then people threw the baby out with the bathwater and were like, just fuck it, let's just get rid of it all, sort of thing. You know, people were happy because I think people were either in on a bit or they were not in on it at all.
I think for me, sorry, Stephen AOS did say in the chat, which was normally my end up point, is that I think the other thing they did was that point. So originally, I think the terrain rules were quite interesting. So was it Deadly that you used to be able to take a hit from, but then you got +1 to hit?
No, damned. You took D3 mortal wounds and you got +1 to hit. Deadly, you rolled a 1, the model was removed.
So I think originally those terrain rules were interesting and impactful, and then Games Workshop were like, oh, we'll make them easier and add more. But then the issue was that no one really remembers the rules. No one really cares about the rules. So realistically, the only ones people ever did was Mystical, Arcane, and Commanding. They're the only ones people cared about. And then I think the issue with all that realm stuff was not only did they add a load of rules in and everyone turned up to events with cheat sheets, but also if you're playing Nagash at an event where they allow 9 extra spells per round, it's way stronger than if you've got a 2-cast wizard. I think that was the issue, wasn't it? Like it wasn't balanced. It wasn't balanced for all armies and all games, which I know is never going to work completely. But I think again it did that thing where it buffed some armies hugely and made some armies toilet.
It's true. It's true. Well, I mean, I think we've generally seen a trend away from them anyway as well. I didn't include them in the Super Series. That doesn't mean that's the be-all and end-all of all conversations, but I at least didn't include mystical terrain in them either. Just for simplicity, for explaining to an audience as well. I think that's one of the things. And also it throws the math off. That's also another thing that's interesting. While it's fun, if you get to a tabletop and there is a piece of arcane terrain, like for you, like if it's near you, it throws the math off on, like, you know, a whole bunch of like predictions and how you've built your list and maybe what you've put in and what you haven't put in, and just for the happenstance of turning up to a board and there being now some arcane there changes stuff up. So I think for some parity, I think that's one of the things that people maybe would like to see kind of done away with. I like it personally, and I think for non-tournament gaming, so match play games you play with your mates and have a laugh with, I think there's still loads of opportunity to have that stuff, because some of the funniest moments have been mystical terrain in the past. In my opinion, like double one charges or just mystical terrain where you know, Nathan's Maw Crusher was just staring at a really pretty hill or something. Always made me laugh.
Old mystical terrain, and see, that's the thing. To make it awesome, old mystical terrain had to be potentially have quite a big impact. Like rolling that one, because mystical was like, hey, you roll a dice on a 2-up, you get rerolls to wound. How massive is that? On a 1, you do nothing for the turn. And so you had that wonderful risk to reward where you're like, oh, okay, have a go. I still remember my Iron Breakers being bunkered in a bit of deadly terrain, just standing there, and Drycha being like, all right, I'm going to go rip their heads off. Ran in, she stepped on a pointy twig that wasn't like her pointy twigs and just 86'd herself and died immediately. And then my Iron Breakers are standing there like, okay. And like it's those moments, but they had huge effects on the game. And unfortunately, to be as noticeable and as memorable as that, it has to have a big impact on the game, or potentially have a big impact on the gameplay, which throws out a bit of balance. Like Nagash on Arcane Terrain was just, you're like, why am I bothering? Like, what am I doing? Nagash just looks at you and goes, I cast what I want.
He's a coward now in the spellcasting world. He's a coward.
Yeah.
Right.
Techless is now the big
Stephen
balls.
makes a good point about teleports as well. We're sticking on it, it seems. It's a good point. In 40k, you can't teleport turn 1. Now there are a lot more like pre-game or pre-set up units in 40k than there are in Age of Sigmar, but you can't teleport turn 1. And in turn 2, you can't teleport in your opponent's territory, and it's only on turn 3 when then you can you can do that sort of stuff. But that's for stuff that goes in reserve. So I wouldn't mind seeing that mechanic brought in as well to stop alphaing. Someone made the chat earlier. It made a point in the chat, which I think is a good one. I think effectively what the game designer should be trying to create is a game that you don't lose on the first turn without having had a turn. I think ultimately that's the kind of key element. But I do think we're getting away from like the crux of the subject today.
Yes.
Okay.
Before we go any further, I just want to say the worst bit about terrain rules is when there's one piece of arcane on the other side, on my side of the table, I lose the rule off and have to move all my models to the other side. I'd get rid of it just for that and continue.
Okay. All right. So, so before we get to structural changes, which will be next year, and it'll be interesting to come back to this conversation and see what does occur. Other things that we like to see from the Winter FAQ, which will most likely only be points changes and War Scroll changes. So, Nathan, I'm going to let you throw a pitch out. What do you think needs a points adjustment or a War Scroll change the most in Age of Sigmar right now?
The most?
I'll give you a moment to think if you want.
Yeah. Well, I would say if we look at things like the ban phase that you were using in the Super Series thing, one of the ones that keep cropping up in the, I mean, we didn't get many ban phases, but the one that cropped up like almost immediately in both the ones was the Mortic Crawler.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think you could give that a good kick in the balls.
So currently rocks about 200. It rocks 200 points in a list.
Yeah.
There's that you. It's funny, when we were doing the coverage yesterday, Dan was in for this conversation, and we were talking about which list to have on. And Owen was suggesting, oh, there's a good list here, and I was like, what's he up against? He's like, Osiarchs, and I was like, is it 2 crawlers, Mortek, and Catacross? He was like, yes. I was like, cool. Like, and when the list, like when an army's so able to write itself, those two crawler editions are pretty much like they're plug and play. They're 200 points though. I do wonder how OCRX would cope without them, because I think it gets them out of a tricky situation. They don't have very dynamic units. They walk across the board a lot. They don't have access to a lot of dynamic stuff.
Fair enough.
But I'm not saying hit them super hard, but I feel like they deserve. Would you change the war scroll or change the points? What's your issue with it, do you think?
I would, I mean, possibly the war scroll could do with a little bit more looking at. I mean, it seems crazy, and that's something in their favor, is that they need line of sight to shoot stuff. But I mean, I'm quite happy that that's the case. But if you look at them, you would be saying no, they should be able to shoot stuff they can't see, but also maybe they can't do their special attacks and stuff. I mean, it's the special attacks that are crazy, really, on those things. Otherwise,
they can wipe a unit of Grox, can't they? Basically.
Yeah. Otherwise, I don't have a problem with them, and they're pretty dangerous without the special attacks. But if they just had their normal attacks, and that would be fine. But it's those crazy little attacks that I don't think they even have to roll to hit to use those attacks. They're just things that happen, and it's just like, well, it just seems bit cuck.
Agreed. I agree. That's interesting. I think some war scroll changes on them might be useful. I don't think points work, because you still want to give them. I still think the army needs access to something in that role, because they don't have a model.
I see what you're saying.
But I understand that maybe it's just the special attacks are an issue, and like Spleen Thief saying in the chat, hitting on a 2+ can be silly. Granting them extra attacks seems very weird. You know, a Liege Cavalot turn around and be like, shoot another rock, and it's like, well, okay, we're firing the max rocks.
Fuck, I wasn't going to shoot.
The thing I find
Put
more...
your back into it, lads. Boss is watching.
As a commander, I'd find it more concerning that it's like, we're fighting. It's a life and death battle here. And you didn't load as many rocks as you could into the catapult. Like, is it like the wedding china? You never know when it's an appropriate time to bring it out, so you just leave it in the cabinet the whole time. Like, oh, no, don't fire the extra rock. Why? I don't know. Just, it's the Sunday. Take it easy.
Just relax. All right, so big shout out to Ridge Hanna. He makes, I think, the top point for me right now is Geminids. I'd put Geminids up to 100 points, though. I wouldn't put them up to 80. I'd add 40 points on Geminids. I'd made Bound Geminids 150 points specifically. And if you're a Seraphon player, I just love you, because I've got Seraphon too, just rebased all mine. They look great, really happy. Great army, super fun. But we shouldn't be allowed to do it. We all know it's not okay. Look in the mirror, just say, should I do the Bound Geminids? And the guy in the mirror will go, you know it's a joke. Come on, let's not do it. Stephen in the chat, I still would bring them at 150 points for Bound Geminids. Yes. I think Bound spells should get... They currently have a +10 point tax on top of them for being able to be uncontrollable by the opposing player. I feel like it should be at least +50%. So whatever the cost of the spell is, +50% seems to make sense. And I would put Geminids up to 100 points. That's my proposal, sir. Be that Games Workshop or Games Workshop in Earth 2. Have you guys got any thoughts? James, how do you feel about Geminids up to 100?
I think I mean, I'd just remove Bound Endless spells. I think they're boring and break the game. How I think it was interesting to play. Like, I think Endless spells added something new and different, and Bound ones ruin it. But yeah, I think Geminids could go up. But more than anything, I think I'd double Bound ones if they leave them in. Like, double.
You double them to 120.
Yeah. So if Geminids is 60, 120, just flat double. I just think, like, the whole point of an endless spell was the first time you cast it, it's exciting and cool, but then it's risk reward, right? Because you might not get to move it. For 10 points, removing that. Yeah,
it's madness. It's madness. It should be so much more. Dan, you got any thoughts on Geminids?
They're insane. absolutely ballistic that spell, it costs so little. Even if all you're doing is putting it out there and then dispelling it in your own turn. I just think it's absurd, absolutely absurd. So yeah, they should go up. I would say the standard ones up to 100 works as well. I get that it's only 1d3 damage per unit, but effectively you cast it and you get to put out there 2d3 mortal wounds, and then you've got an insane amount of debuff like potential as well. That's so cheap.
The Jaws are looking at you and like, am I a sick joke to you, Dan? They do 1d3, at a very limited range.
Purple Sun. Purple Sun is like, I am the ender of worlds. And it's like, yeah, I'm going to take the bright and dark testicles, please. And they're like, but don't you want to end worlds? You're like, yeah, but I'm not going to do it with you, buddy. So I think they need to go up because they're clearly the best call. And yeah, I actually hadn't even thought, when you asked that question, Bound didn't even pop into my head. But now that you do say that, yeah, absolutely. Bound spells are, they're counterplay to the fun of endless spells and the tactics of endless spells.
They really are. They really are. They're over the There's over the genes humping. Just no one wants it. Yeah, like it's not fun for anyone. Yeah, it's just frustrating. Nathan, you got any thoughts on Geminids?
Yeah, they're just great spell, and probably too cheap at the moment. And bound spells can go get fucked.
Agreed. I think that's super fair. Also, I just want to shout out Swaggy Short, who's been saying it for literally 45 minutes. I reckon that Chaos Warriors should also get round 1 on their weapons. I'm into it. I'm with you. I'm saying it now. Let's put that in. Dan, have you got a hot pick for something you'd like to see points changes or rules changes for?
That's such a good one. There's so many that I'd love to see changes done. If I had to pick one, come back to me. I need a moment.
Okay.
I need a moment.
James, we're on you. We're going to do round robins on this.
So, what would I change? I think this. I think like the Marauder thing's really interesting, but they're too consistent in their charge and too strong at fighting. Do you know what I would do? I've got one. I would change the Gaunt Summoner to bring on 10 pink horrors.
Oh my god, you've got 3 painted. You should be on the playtest team. That's how that gets through. That works.
No, I think realistically, if I had to go through the whole thing, I think... Oh, there's so many that I'd change. I'd like to see... I know I always go for bloody Beasts of Chaos, but I think because I played them. I'd like to see a Beast Lord that actually does something.
So would you like to see a War Scroll change specifically?
Yeah. I think either he needs to be 10 points in his current format, or I think he could do with having like 8 wounds, or his same rubbishy 6, but actually hit something.
I would. I think. I mean, you just need a new book, really, for Beasts of Chaos. Ultimately, they need a redesign. I mean, when we talked about the Beast of Chaos book when it first came out, we were like, this is Battletome Zangor. It was really like all the Zangor elements were the best part of the book, and everything else was really left behind. So, you could slash the points on Dragon Ogres by 50%, and other people will say, in the chat right now, they'll be like, holy fuck, Rob, I forgot Dragon Ogres existed. Until I said that then, when the last time you thought about them? Answer me that. Yeah? So they should be 50%
last night
cheaper.
in bed. Oh, sorry.
Wow. Is that because, do you also find Centaur ladies as attractive as I do?
No, no one can do that.
Do you make the best dress up as a dragon thingy?
No, I saved that just for me and you, Nathan, and I can't believe you talked about it on stream.
I was going to get jelly.
Yeah. So instead of 2 elves,
who's the head and who's the head and who's the back?
In a dragon costume.
Yeah.
Oh, we couldn't share that with you. It's an intimate detail of our relationship.
I like how Darker Design's option for Beasts of Chaos is just halve all the points of beasts and give them +1 to all stats. Just +1 on everything. All extra wound, +1 save, halve the points, and let's see where we are. I'm with you on that one as well, actually. I think that seems really fair. Dan, have you got one yet?
Yes, I do actually. I have 2. But one is relatively simple, and we've already spoken about it, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole because it's sort of on the lines of teleporting. So super quickly, I would change the fly high rule for KO so that they come back on the next turn. When they're taken off the board, they don't go back down in the same turn. They come back a turn later. So effectively, if you choose to fly high, you're losing the shooting output of that unit for a turn. That would be mine, because I think that would change the tactics of KO to making them about rapid, like redeploys and then play from that deployment spot, rather than just, now I move to this place where I get to shoot you and you can't get me back. And now I move to this place where I get to shoot you and you can't get me back. So that would be that one. Fly high, a turn gap in between.
Nath, Nath is our KO wizard. What do you think about
that? I don't know. It's quite hard to. The KO stuff is very sort of on the line. I think they went too generous with the points, really, and I think that was they just went crazy in the last FAQ, making everything a bit too cheap. Because I think before the points they were sort of they were good, but you just didn't have enough stuff on the board to be able to do the objective game as well. So it was you had to play really well to do both. But now you just get loads of toys and you get to use all your fancy stuff. And the fancy stuff can be annoying when you're on the other side of the table. But once you get hold of them, you can give them a good stuffing.
Yeah. All right. So I got a question for you, because I think this is a fair question, and I don't want anyone who's listening to be upset by it. And if you are, please feel free to tell me to fuck myself. Would you like to do away with the no skill spell in a bottle? Because I think it's a no skill, like uninteractive MPE. Just drop a fucking vortex on them and then jog on. I think that's just not a cool thing. I don't think that works overly well. And I feel like what it does is it means that you aren't playing. You're playing a specific KO way for one whole trick because the Warp Lightning Vortex is too good. And really, it means you're just eschewing the rest of the book. And I feel like if you look at other versions of KO lists that aren't spell in a bottle, you see people playing KO not more like how they were designed. Because honestly, I don't think Games Workshop ever designed a list. They just throw a bunch of stuff together and they're like, "What do you think of this pizza?" And you're like, "Fucking this!" It's like my cooking. I just find stuff and I fry it in a pan, yeah, and then I eat it, yeah, and I'm like, "Well, today was good." Yesterday wasn't.
I personally love spell in a bottle. I wouldn't get rid of it. I kind of agree with what the chat is saying. No faction spells in a bottle. That does sound a little bit more along the lines of something that would be balanced. But realistically, we're not saying no spell in a bottle. We're saying no Warp Lightning Vortex in a bottle, which maybe suggests that is still a very, very overpowered spell. Like
yeah,
no one is saying no Bull Taurus flaming headbutt thing in a bottle, and no one's out there saying that. Everyone that hates it hates Warp Lightning Vortex in a bottle. Which is that a problem with the bottle, or is that a problem with Warp Lightning Vortex still, because it goes off twice in the turn it's cast?
Do you know what? I feel like this is an abusive relationship where it's normalized to me, and I agree with you. Again, I'm just going to call for it. Warp Lightning Vortex, 384 points. Yeah, right. You're right, Dan. You're right. Twitch chat, you're also right. And anyone, what do you think? Because I think, and I mean this with all love, fuck that spell. They either change it so it ticks once, like a grown-up spell, or 384 points. You got any thoughts on that, Nath?
Yeah, the endless spells are super fun, but then it's just not very balanced most of the time. And that one in particular is nuts. So
yeah,
I just love Hadoukening out a purple sun. Like he just jumps out and he's like, "Sure you can," and like whatever, just fires a purple sun at someone, and then that's the fun. But I do see why a lot of people are hating on. it for Warp Lightning Vortex. Completely agree. I think it's busted. And the people that are saying like Geminids out of a bottle sucks as well. Correct, it does. It would suck less if they're at 100 points though. I think that there's sometimes when we're talking about these balances, you have to treat the symptom, not the sickness, not the symptom. And
Yeah.
I don't think the bottle is the problem. I think it's what can be put in it. And
You
that's
should
the problem.
probably be able to be given a chance to unbind it as well, really, to be honest.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
when
yeah.
it's cast as a spell, just say it's cast on a 10.
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, you
But
both.
there's
make
lots
some
of
good
little
points.
things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
I think spelling a bottle for me is like it feels like the KO armies aren't necessarily just playing their way; they're just doing a thing. But I agree with you; it could just be the Warp Lightning Vortex. If you had nothing that's quite as good, maybe Geminids or Purple Sun would be something you throw in anyway. But why? Yeah, Warp Lightning Vortex is 80 points. I know it went down, which is just insane because they're just idiots. But anyway, triple the point of Warp Lightning Vortex, and also it's an 11 to cast. And if you don't cast it, your wizard takes 42 mortal wounds.
Shouldn't it cast on a 13? That would...
Perfect.
Solve
Never
all the
castable.
problems.
We solved it.
Yeah.
Castable on a 13. Can't be cast. Can't go
Unique
in a
bonuses. Well, see,
Yeah.
for me, that bottle is interesting. And like the lists that I've written are combat KO lists, and I take a spell that either improves their combat or like the Taurus, so I can hit a unit, make them fight last with it, and then multi-charge a couple of units across, knowing that it becomes a techie piece for me to do something different with the list rather than having to rely on shooting.
Yeah.
And
I think,
and I get that it makes the army play different, but it offers some versatility in an army in the way that for a lot of other forces, endless spells offer them a little bit more versatility. And I don't think anyone would hate that element of it, but what does suck is exactly right. You just go, oh, sweet, I pick my toys up here, I put my toys back down over here, and then I chuck a bottle at you, and now there's a Warp Lightning Vortex doing a ton of mortal wounds to a big chunk of your army. And I didn't have to, like, at least with the Skaven, it's like I have to teleport, and then I have to Vortex, and like you've got a chance to unbind. There's all these different elements in getting it up into the middle of
classic. You're doing a case Scavedy thing. Steve makes a good suggestion. Like you do it, but on a 1 or 2, your boat explodes because the vortex has gone off inside your boat. Add that risk reward element, which is the most risk reward is what makes a game interactive, and that interactivity creates fun. All right, so we talked about KO. Plus, I also think Nathan's point earlier we kind of skipped over. A general 10% increase on KO points would be pretty nice across the board. Not go any harder than that. And we're unfortunately going to have to go to one of my favourite armies, who appointed, I think, pretty fine, Seraphon. Pretty much having rebased them last week. As I was looking at them, I thought, you guys are pointed bang on, is what I thought. If anyone would like to buy my Seraphon army, please let me know. No, I don't want to sell it. No, but yeah, they need some structural changes and some point changes, I think, ultimately. Fangs of Sotek, command ability, being able to shoot and then retreat, should probably just go into the bin. Ultimately, it's very strong. And there's a whole bunch of things that are included in that. There's the abilities to stack mortal wounds and pluses to hit, where you don't require a resource other than a very cheap character, and you don't so you don't have to spend CP, for example. In some situations you do, or you don't even have to cast a spell. So that's a thing. And then that command ability is just bonkers. Ultimately. So I think that command ability would be good to go away. But really, the skinks are a massive issue because of all the buffs you can give them. And even if you were to do like 10 points added to a skink block, you would then still you just lose a toy. You don't lose loads. So I think maybe the army comes up okay if you just add a ton of points on. Ultimately, I don't think there's anything in there where you think fuck. But I don't know, Nathan. What are your thoughts on the Seraphon?
I don't know. The problem is they don't have like a big army to start with, and so there comes a point where they'll have too little at the start, and they'll be very susceptible to an alpha strike. I don't know. I think I don't know what to say really
Well,
to
if we-
fix
so if
them.
we look
Just
at- so we-
just
so we
get
look-
rid of all of their allegiance abilities and just let them play with the bear scrolls.
I mean, that works. That works as well because they don't need that. I think there's
Got loads of free rules that they don't pay points for.
or they don't pay in-game resource for either, whether
Yeah,
be it
which are-
spellcasting or CP. Yeah, it's
Really
just...
good. Give them the bad moon. Let them play with that fucker.
They are. So one of the things that obviously you haven't seen because me and LLV during COVID haven't done the tournament stats because they really haven't been in tournaments. But Seraphon are like the strongest book in the game, in my opinion. They're really, really up there. Although, if you go back and listen to the show that we talked about, me and Owen talked about today, that Archeon counterpick is actually really, really clever because his reroll sixes to hit on Archeon is actually pretty impressive into Skinks because that does some really good work. However, you can add pluses to hit on them, and there's enough shots that it can become quite scary. And that's a one-case situation where you're just taking this huge model to try and like make sure you don't get blammoed by Skinks, which is fucking shit.
It's not just one giant model either. He is basically the lord of all chaos.
Yeah, with his Chaos Sorcerer, Johan Mate.
He's
But
a big
yeah,
twat.
I mean, so yeah, Croak should be like, so he's 320 now. He should be 400, 500 points. And I'm not being like hyperbolic about that. I think he should be a lot of points. He generates a ton of CP. He's got great utility in his War Scroll. And then if you think about it, you always pay 100 points for the Saurus Guard. Yeah, so if you take that 100 points off, he's now just 420 points. Yeah, just that, like, for that survivability. Like, there's loads you can say about Croak, but he needs to go up points significantly. I mean, Salamanders went up points, and I would still take them all day. They're great. They're brilliant for their points cost, be they singles or doubles. Ripidactyls are okay. Pterodons are great. Bastillodons are brilliant, if you put into them. So I feel like it's like a points issue. All the characters, like 70-point characters that buff everything, that are just insane. It's just the buffs available to them are so good, and they're so cheap to put into your army. And they apply really, really well. The only thing that I would argue needs a little look at is Saurus. I'd like Saurus to have like some love, be that Saurus warriors. But James, you got any thoughts on like Seraphon as a whole?
That whole book is just full of good things, isn't it? I think that's the problem for me. I think like originally when it came out, everyone had a cry about salamanders, but actually the problem is if you make salamanders 300 points per salamander, then they'll just take a load of skinks. Like I almost think that like trying to work out how you balance out that Seraphon book without rebalancing every other army is like a whole show in its own right.
I don't think it's even that complicated. I think you just slap on a load of points. Someone in the chat has just said, just bang 20% on everything. And I don't think that's bad. Because basically, what you really do then, if you just kind of shorten the conversation down, is you have 20% less in an army. And what does that really look like? If we look at Vito's list from the weekend, he had Croak, he had a unit of Saurus Guard, he had 3 times 40 skinks, 120 wounds skinks, he had 2 Star Priests and 2 Skink Priests, yeah?
And a Steg.
And then he had a Stegodon, a Skink Chief on Stegodon, and he had 2 units of Chameleon Skinks. Take 20% off that, right? And then, I know, Nate's like, when's this list going to end? Yeah.
It ended just about turn 1 when Archaon got into 2 units of skinks, turn 1 and went, coin-operated Archaon went blender mode. It was, because we honestly, we started out being like, this one will probably be a bit of an uphill battle for Chaos. And then at the end of turn 2, Rob and I were like, skinks? And they were the tadpoles had been trimmed. It was
they had.
really satisfying.
But had there been just 10 skinks in his way and a bunch of salamanders behind him, he'd have been dead in a turn. So,
true.
like, it really does swings and roundabout. But yeah, the Seraphon book is pretty well written internally, and Pete, I'd agree with that in the chat. The Seraphon book's one of my favourite books, along with the Tzeentch book, for design. As in, like, you go Thunder Lizard, you now have, like, you're seeing Saurus, Old Bloods on Carnosaurs and all sorts of mad shit that you would have never expected to see, which is awesome, right? That's really cool. So they've done that really well. They just need to change the points on some of the offensive elements, which is basically most of it. So if you look at Vito's list, you would lose the Skink Chief on Stegodon. Yeah, but you would still have 120 bodies, 4 buff characters, Croak, and some chameleon skinks. That's still a solid army, ultimately. So I feel like that points increase would be a huge positive. So 20% up on Saurus, on Seraphon, 20% off Gits. That's what I want to see. Yeah, in the GW economy of Age of Sigmar. Nathan, 20% off Gits. 20%.
We're already bringing loads of bodies, and
not the Gits. Maybe
flood the board. Yeah, you don't want to make the stabbers cheaper, because I think they're pretty good for their points at the moment. You probably want to make other stuff cheaper.
I definitely want all the trogs. I want the trogs to be 20% cheaper. The problem is, Nate thinks like the whole Gits army is basically S tier right now, and like that. So when I'm like, take 20% off it, he's like, they're basically perfect, Rob. Fuck you. Yeah, these are the best that they could be. But I really think they could come down.
Drop the points on Dankhold Trogoths. Yeah, fair enough. And the Trog boss. Yeah.
Do we think? I think maybe one of the biggest changes you could make to Gits is you could add an entire new unit of netters in. Nothing else, just the net guys. Think how much money I'll make.
To be fair, I don't want this to happen because I don't want this to happen because you're right. I'd be netted all over and it would trigger me. And also, big shout out to Pete in the chat who's pointed out: give more units the grok keyword. Nathan, can you explain to me what the problem is and what all of the Gits of the world need to see happen?
Really? Yeah, no, well, like the Gits book is not that far off what the Seraphon book could be, but in the Gits book, they just like keyworded the fuck out of everything so that everything only buffs one specific other type of unit, if that unit even exists. Whereas the Seraphon book, they're like buffing sluts. They'll buff anything that walks past. So, I mean, it's that. And the question is, which way is it better to be? Is it better that that everything gets buffed to fuck, or is it that you're very selective with what you buff? Having the two in the same universe is obviously not ideal, because when they turn up and face each other, they're like, what the fuck's going on over that side of the table? What are they doing? And obviously the Seraphon can play fast and loose and smash the shit out of everything, whilst the Gits player is busy trying to create perfect little circles so that he can get a few buffs on something, and then finding out that no, actually it's got the wrong fucking keyword and you can't buff it anyway. So yeah.
Whereas there's a Stegodon running around like fucking smashing stuff, and they're like, there's some mortals and I can run and charge you. Like, no, you can't. Skink keyword, mate. It's like, got the skink keyword, buddy. Yeah, look at this little fella on top. Yeah, I'm 10% skink.
Yeah.
I think as well, it's in general, I would put across the board in almost every army, anything that guarantees you get whatever like buff you're going for without having to roll for it, like there's no chance of it going wrong, should go up. There's exceptions to the rule, but I think, like the skink thing, like we were saying, they get all of these buffs. Why? Because you took a cheap character that gives it to them. It's like, oh, what does he need to roll to do that? Roll? He just gives it to them. Like, why? Because I said he does, and I get to say things, and that's what he does. Like even the Rune Lord, like clearly, like in Cities of Sigmar, clearly the Rune Lord's power, it's all built in the old mythos of like dwarves don't use magic, so they harness it, and it's reliable. It's not quite as crazy strong, but it's reliable. It works on a 2-up. So that means that yes, you can reliably think that it's going to happen, but there's always a chance it doesn't. And there's always that risk that you're going to be left out in the cold in that moment when you desperately need it. And I think that's, for me, a big miss in a lot of the different areas of Age of Sigmar at the moment, is that there's so many abilities that just happen. Spell in a bottle just happens. This just happens. Being able to shoot your gun is what should just happen. Hitting the target shouldn't be a guarantee.
Mm-hmm. All right. So Gits down 20%, Seraphon up 20%. Those are some of the key bits. Beasts, 50% point slash, 50% definitely off.
Do we dare go lower? Like, I mean, is that going to be enough? I think.
Wait till he gets to the Seraphon book.
Now this is just, and I'm going to be like really upfront about this. This is just arbitrary now. This is just comes from a place of hurt and hate. This isn't sensible, and this is just emotive. Just eels, not defensive eels. Although I think they should go up points as well. Actually, because of the new book, I think defensive eels should go up points because they're much better in the new book. But offensive eels, just because, have them go up points. Just cause. Yeah, that's it. Like, I don't know, 30 points. I'm going to pick that. And Kurnoth Hunters can come down as well by 50 points. Like, right, that's how I feel. Got any thoughts on that, Nathan? Offensive eels going up 30 points? Happy with that?
Yeah, fine. Do it.
Good. Yeah, we're into that. James, Dan, you got any thoughts?
No, that's literally the only thing that
I think. 32 points.
Agreed. I also agree with that.
I'd love them to do that. I'm just waiting for the day that Games Workshop are like, Skinks were 100 points for 10, now 107. And you just get to that point where you're like, I've got 36 points left. What do I do with that?
They have to increase exponentially. Every additional eel you buy costs twice as much as the one that you bought before it.
yeah, they get more expensive because they're cheaper. Yeah. Right, so I would say, and this is the thing here, so Aaron M says putting up eels, 20 points for both, 190 and 160. So I think defensive eels should come up as well. Offensive eels, I don't think you can ever argue offensive eels being 190 in a world of Skyfires being 200, Kurnoth Hunters being 200. Like, you could just keep pointing at things all day long and just be like, there's no way. They're too good for what they are, and they should just go up. And if that means the faction's worse, then fuck them. Like, ultimately, like, I don't know what to say. Like, they've been there, too good, too cheap for too long, and been the only thing that have carried an entire faction. They've now got at least some stuff that's got more of a look in. So, like, and the whole game shouldn't have to suffer just because there's one kit. You know, like, it seems weird. So I think they should definitely go up. And I think, yeah, David Adams has got it at 200 and 180. I think at least 200 for the offensive eels. And I'd be willing to shake a leg on the defensive eels a bit.
I think there's some other good, like, suggestions in there that are like reworks to War Scrolls and things. But if you were looking for the one easy solution in the FAQ and the Winter FAQ that like balances the faction and lets us see more variety, that's it.
Yeah, that works really well for IDK.
I think,
go on.
I was just going to say, I think realistically, I know like we keep waffling, don't we? But it's continually worth kind of pointing out that I don't think we're going to see any rules changes this FAQ, because all the rules changes for any models are going to come within this batch of Broken Realms books, aren't they? So
Yes.
what we're actually going to see is just some points that get meddled with that don't affect the models that are in those books.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Aaron's saying that the turtle is aggressively pointed 340 as well. I would agree with the turtle being aggressively pointed, but it isn't overly aggressively pointed if you compare it to the other monsters that we've seen released this year, like Bastillodons and Carnosaurs and other things. Like, there's definitely been like a batch of points this year for some books and for the new releases where stuff has been like on a, like, if you compare the turtle, for instance, to either of the two mountain goats. They sit around the same, and they have that kind. They're operating at that same kind of level. It's just that everything else is just worse than those things. Ultimately, so you know, I would throw Cygors in, obviously at 0 points. You can have 4 Cygors for free. Is what I would do in a Beast of Chaos list. So OCR Bone Reapers, I'd like to see the Morghasts come down. I think that would be a positive in that army, and I maybe wouldn't even mind seeing Stalkers come down 10, maybe 20 points. But I would really like to see the Morghast come down as well. They're quite swingy. There's no real buffs to necessarily make them like super like reliable, like you know, and so they swing a lot and miss. And they're not a lot of wounds. Again, that you can't buff overly well to be defensive. So they operate pretty solo inside the book, and they don't really like. You don't really like buff them up a lot arguably. But I do like the 3d6 charge on the Morghast with the fly, and I feel like if you were to affect the crawler a little bit, I feel like those Morghasts could be like that's awesome, right? These flying dead monsters, like, you know, they're beefy boys. I just love them, and I think that they should see more play generally. So I'd like to see them looked at a little bit. I don't know what anyone else thinks.
Yeah, just the other stuff in the army is too good. Like you say, it's a list that writes itself.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, so that's OC arcs. Nighthaunt, great point from Speckles there that the black coach is 30 points, more than 3 eels. I put that black coach straight down to, like, I don't know, how many points is he right now?
He's also not a hero.
Yeah.
Every time. Why is he not a hero, but the old black coach in the other one is?
I don't think it should be a hero because I don't want to see command traits or artifacts go on it. But see, the black coach for me is a tough one to point because pointing it at the start of the game and at the end of the game is really tough. Like I've had ones that I've killed turn 1 without too much work, and then other ones that have just rampaged through my army because I didn't stop them by turn 2, and then they were just like, now I am become God. So like the last thing I want is to see them getting artifacts. I'm so sorry, I don't want them to be heroes.
I do, and I want them to be like 150 points. Like,
no.
I want them to. They're shit. They do nothing. They're just like, all right, I'm here, and you're like, what you can do? Like, pretty much nothing. No impact hits, really. Really don't have any output. You're like, okay, so what's your job? It's like, basically, I just kind of like, I'm here. Like, they're a bus that stops in traffic in your way, and you're like, fuck's sake. Like, I need to get around this. I'm fucking got somewhere to go. Nathan, his white van, fucking beeping, throwing copies of his son out the window at him, you know, like shouting at a lady who walks past, nice tits, love. Like, you know, that's Nathan, like, on the road. He sees a bus and he's like, fuck! Fucking people on the bus! So, yeah, do you not think they should be much, much cheaper?
I think they should be cheaper, but I don't necessarily want to see us go like overcorrect. And obviously we're making plans for Earth 2 here. And I don't want to overcorrect and then go, they're cheaper, they're heroes, they're everything. I don't mind the idea of seeing them slightly cheaper, but I don't think that we need to go down to 100 points and, I don't know, make a dead guy the leader of an army.
All right, okay. I have a suggestion.
I mean, he's
what
so bad at being a
transport?
vampire, he's not even alive anymore. You want that guy in charge.
How would you feel about them being a transport?
Awesome. I'd be about that.
Yeah?
That'd be like super cool.
They fly and then they drop a unit off.
That'd be wicked.
Yeah.
Ghost bus.
They'd be so badass. Just a bunch of ghosts piled out. They're like, all right, there's fucking 70 of us in here. We're like, well, that's useful. You've got an incorporeal form.
The chain rasps coming up, and they're just like, oh, why did you do that? And like, I didn't want to be too tired. It's like, you don't have legs. You float. And like, yeah, I know, but like, it's a long way from. I was at Dave's place. We'd had a few drinks. We didn't want to be wandering to battle and then not make it here. So we hopped on the old ghost bus. But yeah, that would be really cool. I think that would be a much more interesting rework for them.
Yeah, agreed. So, like, look, Nighthaunt are one of the oldest books along with Stormcast, and they need some love. And hopefully we're going to see that in the Broken Realms book. I not necessarily think that there's points adjustment you can make, but I would like to see pretty much.
They'll get some new rules, won't they? They'll be ghost keeps or something.
Yeah.
They'll get to redeploy before the battle starts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So before I move on to another faction, Earth 2 wishlisting mode, change points by more than 20 max for some units, and just make currently shit stuff broken for 6 months to shake it up a bit. Stephen AOS. So this was one of my dreams when I got first shown the GHB. So the very first ever GHB I got shown before GHB 1. I got shown when I went into one of my Games Workshop interviews, and they were like, "This is what we're doing." I was like, "Fuck yeah!" And I was like, "You're gonna change it every one season? Monsters are gonna be good. Next season, hordes are gonna be good." And they're like, "Yeah." I was like, "Fuck, that's gonna be so wicked." And obviously they lied to me. But that would be super cool. Just go black coaches, 4 of them. They're now 100 points each, and you'd be like, "What will that do to the game?" But probably nothing because they suck. But it would be cool because 4 black coaches would fly around. Yeah, I'm into that.
Able to be taken in units, just a unit of 3 black coaches, and then every one of them is full of ghosts. Oh my gosh, I'd actually kind of like to see that. That'd be fun.
Right? You tell me that model's not beautiful and you wouldn't like to see it on the table more.
Yeah, it is a great model.
Great model. Okay, but yeah, I agree with Stephen. I think just randomly making stuff, especially stuff that's shit, like 4 Cygors, make them 40 points each.
Great model.
Yeah, great model, James, but terrible. Come on, it's terrible.
Do you know what you could do to make Cygors better?
Go for it.
Give them 32 shots. They're like, just picking boulders up and going for it.
Just keeps launching rocks.
Yeah. Plus
yeah.
9 to hit wizards.
Right, okay.
If he stands next to rubble terrain, he gets extra 10 shots.
Yeah, it's too easy. Yep.
That's too easy.
This new edition writes itself.
Oh my god, you guys need to come play fucking Age of Sigmar at Games Workshop 2. Because it's so much more fun. Right. 40 points for Cygor for 2. Yeah, you can have 4 Cygor for 40 points. As
in a unit, 32 shots each.
Right.
Still on rubble.
So Dun Nighthorn, what's he going to say? Zinch? Zinch obviously is like pretty effective inside the game, and is doing very well. It's in that kind of S category tier. But I feel, and I've said this before on the show, I feel like you could genuinely like disrupt its how good it is. You could take it from hero to 0 very, very quickly. I would say that the big birds, the Lords of Change, are still like heavily costed in what they really actually do. They're still like meh. Ultimately, I think horrors are fine. They're awful to deal with. I get you, but like they don't. The army doesn't really have survivability built in. And so if you're going to see any points go up, let's say Flamers or Pink Horrors again, even though they have gone up points, I would quite like to see other stuff and other builds go down. There are lists and ways to do Acolyte and Zangor kind of spammy lists, but they're not great. And so if you are going to take out the teeth out of the Zinch book, I would like to see them given some at least some molars or something at the back, and bring down some other units to kind of rework it. But ultimately, it's a really, really the Lord of Magic is a dual caster. That's right. Who is stronger at casting magic, Dan? Yeah, is it an Arc Regent, so a mental dead fella? Yeah, or one of the avatars of the Lord of Magic?
Oh, that's a toughie. So on one hand, you've got someone who's dedicated their life and sold their soul to effectively like the emotional embodiment of magic and change itself. And on the other side, you've got a dead guy who did too much meth during his life. Oh gosh,
sound like the same bloke to me.
Basalt mentalist.
Obviously,
you described the same guy.
Yeah, obviously it's the dead guy because he was snorting pure realm stone, and it gave him strong magical powers. That's got to be it, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's just so the birds really actually aren't as good. It's really everything around the birds which are useful. I wouldn't mind seeing them go to 3 casts, and I think that point.
You're saying the feathers?
Yeah.
I'd also obviously their formations, like their War Scroll battalions, just need a points increase too.
Yeah, it would be nice. It probably would be nice to see change hosts just generally fuck off. To be honest, just like
you know what? The best bit about change host and that comment is I think people have been saying that for the whole time Age of Sigmar's existed. Like that first inch come back out and everyone was like, "Oh, this change host, fuck that." Still going. I mean, it's been rewritten. Still hated.
I'm gonna put a promise down now for Games Workshop right now. If in your FAQ it writes, if I read the Zinch one, it says change host, and then the answer is just fuck off, I'll never say a bad word about you again. This is your one chance. Yeah, and it's like...
I hope someone sends them just that clip, and I hope that it comes out and it just says bleeped out them. Removed from game.
Yeah. Just 500 points. Like what? You want to pay a quarter of your army to take this? I'd be fine with it. I'm like, there you go. Enjoy.
Yeah. So I feel like the change host needs to come out, and then you'll see other lists like Host Arcanum is fun. I don't think you need to change scream as much. Flamers probably like you add 10 points onto Flamers and see if it like you lose something out of a list, basically. But just get rid of Change Host, and then I think the Tzeentch book is techie enough that it's interesting. Ultimately, what have we not done so far? Oh my God, Dan, James, don't be too upset when I say it. Khorne, bless him.
Oh well, you got to bless him because nobody else will, by the looks of things. Khorne only slipped out of a decent place in the last little while. Like they had some fun stuff going when their new book came out. What happened to Khorne? Used to be cool.
The new
it was
scenarios
never cool.
screwed them.
It was never cool.
It was never.
Are we done with Khorne yet? So bored.
Yeah.
Do you know? On an honest note, like Bloodthirsters, never been good. Never been good in years.
I mean, there's a whole bunch of people who disagree with you, but you know.
I just think the thing with Khorne is at the moment I'm bored by the following is what you see. Slaughter Priest, and then 2 of the 3.
Oh, don't even that
stupid prayer,
that stupid thing. What is it? Priest something. Everyone.
Yeah. And anyway,
every game.
Like it's the same. Like we were talking about how Bone Reapers writes itself. Almost there's 2 Khorne lists. And every single time I play Khorne or see Khorne or anything like that, it's a variation on one of those 2 Khorne lists. But at the core of it, there's 2 priests. And then there's either Bloodthirsters or there's...
what's that? But what's the War Scroll Battalion called with the 2 Slaughter Priests that get to reroll their casts?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's called Basic Bitch something, but I can't remember.
Okay, so normally you see Tyrants is what you normally see. Yeah, and you normally see a bunch of Bloodthirsters with a pile in 6 inches. But I think people have tried to move around that a little bit. You've started to see impact hit lists a bit. But ultimately, I think they've got a whole bunch. They've got a whole bunch of problems. Blood Tithe being one of them that they've spent all of it. When they're like everyone else is like, yeah, I'm just going to do what I want with my summoning points, and they're like, I'll use all my Blood Tithe, I guess. You can't save it up for a big wombo combo, so I think that's rough. They really could do with a run and charge command ability or a retreat and charge command ability would be sweet as fuck for Khorne. That'd be really, really nice. And then I guess you could just give them some points drops. One of the big problems is like a lot of their units are competing against Slaves to Darkness units with a mark. So like Khorne Knights with a mark against Jugs, and even just allying in a Chaos Sorcerer Lord or anything like that, or allying in Be'lakor, for example. All just make the army better, but they're things from outside their own book. They could do with some like internal changes and some. I don't think that they need points ultimately. I think they need
my realistic. That book needs that book's old now. It probably needs rewriting, and I hate the fact that every time there's a Khorne book, the next event you go to, every other person is playing Khorne.
Well, they always have 8 Bloodthirsters as well. They're like, yes, finally, and then after like 6 months, they're like, oh, it was right.
I think after that book
can we talk about the biggest Khorne change that needs to happen?
Yeah.
The dragon.
10 points.
No, it doesn't need to be 10 points.
If you invested all that money buying that thing, painting that potato man that stands on its back, beautiful dragon, potato of a rider, you could have it for free. It's rubbish anyway.
I think he should come down some points in a world of Ghoul Kings on Terrorgeist. Where
what do you mean?
In the chat. I'm pretty certain Speckles played against him, against the Khorne Dragon with some Ghoul Kings on Terrorgeist. He just went over and fucking one-shotted it.
I think as well, I'd like to see one change there. I'd love the dude on his back to not have 12 attacks. Like, what other human-sized critter has more than 7 attacks? Like, my goodness, he must unleash the Alabaster Yak so many times a day to have biceps and forearms that strong.
He's 394 pounds now.
He's also 1,200 points.
Yeah, he's 394 pounds, and he still has less wounds than a Dreadsaurian.
Right.
Oh, another good point. Let's bring the Dreadsaurian down in points. That's a fact. Yeah.
Can we
thank
make
you
that
very much.
380 again so I can ally it into every list? Because I own the bloody thing and now I can never use it.
Nah, it should be like round Bastiladon level, like 320. Sucks. So
Brilliant.
just get him down to 320 and have a great
Got
time.
35 wounds now, though.
You should be able to get, for a Dreadsaurian, at least 18 Dragon Ogres. And that's a conversation you never thought you'd ever hear ever on a podcast about competitive Age of Sigmar. Like, someone like, what game did you play? I had a Dreadsaurian, 18 Dragon Ogres charging. You're like, what happened? Like, nothing, because it's a realm of make-believe where none of that ever would fucking happen. Yeah. Anyway. So, Khorne, we've done that. Slaanesh, obviously getting a new book, so I don't think we need to talk about that very much. Tzeentch, we talked about that as well. Nurgle, I would bring Blight Kings back up because it's super boring. I put Pusko of Blight Lords down because I think I should put. I put Plague Drones down. I think Plague Bearers fine. I love the little Thricefold play. I think that's super fun. I'd make most of their characters like Spallspox Scrivener and all the other Sloppity Bilepiper. I'd make them like 40 points, maybe 30 points. I know you're asking why. Hold on, let me just answer this. Okay. You'd be like, why Sloppity Bilepiper 30 points? So you can say it every time. You'd be like, who's
amazing.
This? Sloppity Bilepiper.
It's free. Take a Nurgle army, get him free. If every time you use him, you're like, Sloppity Bilepiper is going to move. You remember the old rules that were fun? That should be it. It should be like, Sloppity Bilepiper is moving.
Yeah.
Free.
And then you have to play a bagpipe.
No, I don't want that.
If you ever do anything with the model without referencing it by its full name, it gets very huffy and offended that you didn't call it Sir Sloppity Bilepiper and marches off the board.
Yeah, done. It's at least.
But otherwise, you get it for free. Like, otherwise, it's free. It's like, you know, like when you're playing a card like or something, and you forget to say and someone's like, gotcha, draw a card or whatever. That's the Sloppity Bilepiper. You stop calling him by his full name, he buggers off, and you're like, bugger, forgot.
But it is one of the older books, though, and I feel like it's got some strengths in it, which belie its nature. Obviously, you've got the cycle of contagion, you've got run and charge because of the fact you don't gnaw more. Their summoning seems good because it's not too strong, which I think is viable. But there's been a whole bunch of units that have just never really seen pay. Beast of Chaos, I don't really care about them going down points or being better because it's a single monopose model. Like, what do you want from me? I don't want to see 13 of them on the board. That would just look weird. Just Hadoukening round, it would look really weird. Big Fatties being cool, that's gone. Pusko Blight Lords coming down, I think, would be good. Because they, or maybe having a War Scroll change or something. Their role in the army is weird. You know, like we've talked about what Stalkers do and what Mortek Crawlers do inside of Ossiarch Bone Reaper's army. But the Pusko Blight Lords just kind of fulfill a role of just being a unit that does some damage and are kind of fast. And it's like, well, the army's kind of fast, and there's other units that kind of do damage. Like, they're not really they don't really do anything, if that makes sense. They're just there. I don't think points necessarily changes that, but that would be fun.
I'm still horrified that Nurgle is one of the fastest. Like, I still haven't gotten over that Nurgle is the fastest army in the game at times. You know, their movement, they get all these buffs to movement, and then they can run and charge, and then they get I'm like, oh my god, Nurgle, slow down. You are not the Speed Kings, and yet here they are. But it's probably because they just slime up the ground and then use it like a slip and slide to just towards their opponents.
But I do like what they've had in recent times, where you hit them and you get hurt. I quite like that mechanic. That's a fun mechanic. You get covered in slime and grease. Nate, you got any thoughts on Nurgle?
Yeah, I don't think they're in too bad a place. I think if everything was sort of that sort of level, it'd be a good game.
Yeah, I do. But do you think? Would you like to not see the Blight Lord, the Blight King spam? Because I feel like that's just a bit like there.
Yeah, well, I mean, in general, I'm not a fan of spam. So if they could deal with that, that would be a great spam in all the army builds. But yeah, obviously, if that's something that becomes prevalent, then they need to go up slightly in points. But at the moment, I think there's so much stuff that deals huge spikes of damage that could probably chow their way through a bunch of Blight Kings quite easily.
Okay, all right, that seems fair. So that's Nurgle. Although they're not terrifying people generally, but I love the little Thricefold build at the minute. which is knocking around, and I think that's a little cool thing. But it needs a rework probably as a book. It's one of the older books that we're seeing. Stormcast are a book. Stormcast points adjustments. Obviously, we've seen the rise of the snipe hammer. We've seen there's Vanguard, but then the rest of the book suffers from. It just needs a new book. We could talk about points all day, but it does need just a new book generally.
Yep.
Even the Stormkeep stuff has done little to like. There's just a whole. Go on.
So old.
But there's just loads of models, and just lots of it does nothing, or
Well,
it
and
all does
also,
the same thing. So you pick the same thing.
I'll get triggered, but also, like, all those stupid heroes that are tied to one faction, like, stop it. No one else has it. Just open them up.
So
it makes
sorry.
it more boring.
Do you think in Age of Sigmar 3 we're not getting 800 more Stormcast miniatures?
No, I'm good with that. I like the miniatures. I hate the fact that, like, Sure Charge has to be in Hammers of Sigmar, and the named woman from Blight War has to be in Hammers of Sigmar. Like, it's dumb. Like, I don't want.
And
I
Harad?
get it. No idea.
That's the name, isn't it?
I no idea.
Black Talon.
That's the
Oh,
one.
damn.
I own her. Never used her. Don't want to play Hammers of Sigmar. Boring.
You can take her as a Knight Zephyrus.
Yeah, she's worse. It's just
Yeah.
it's just dumb, isn't it? I just don't like that almost pigeonhole of like we've wrote all these other factions that are interesting, but this one gets all the fancy
Named character.
Well,
Yeah.
actually, one of the things I'd like to see them do is factionalize Stormcast out even more. I think now it's too broad. Like, if you actually look at Space Marines, one of the big conversations we've been having on the 40k show is with Space Marines, they've taken a lot of the identity out of the factions. So, like White Scars and Dark Angels and Space Wolves are all Blood Angels, basically the fucking same. Like, really, you just say, okay, well, the Blood Angels can't charge 3d6 and the Space Wolves can now, so maybe they're the better versions. So I would like to see them do a lot more like what they did with the Seraphon and the Tzeentch book, where those sub-factions change how you play. Like, Thunder Lizard, I'm taking Basiladons, I'm taking monsters. You know, so, like, that's my thing. Like, I'm better. I feel like they need to learn that the sub-factions shouldn't just be some inherent global buff, but instead should buff specific units, and that way that unit or those couple of units become the thing for that sub-faction, which is cool, and then you end up with like different and then you can kind of point stuff around and change the points on stuff based on sub-factions. Obviously, I'd like to see sub-factions have points as well, but that's never going to happen, and I've talked about this loads. But I do feel like that they should do that with Stormcast, right? Like, there should be one that makes cats really good in a fight. Yeah, like just cats instead of just any melee unit good in a fight, because then you just find the best melee unit and you apply that buff to it, right? So there should be one that makes cats good, and then there should be ones that make. I don't know.
Well, in that Deepkin have like some of the Deepkin ones, all of their rules are about they provide buffs to the mounts themselves, not the riders, just the mounts, because they're all around about animals. Unfortunately, we're also in a meta where eels kick ass, so everyone's like, "Oh, sweet, I'm taking a ton of eels. Oh, I'll just take the one that makes eels better. Yeah, easy."
Exactly.
Unfortunately, or Daughters of Cain, it's like, you know that save after save you get? And yeah, there's one that makes that better. Should I look at any of the other ones? Why would you? Good point. Take that one. Hagnar it is.
Yeah. So I feel like I really, really do feel like they could do some amazing stuff with the Stormcast book, because the model line is beautiful, and then like the lore around it as well. If it's Space Marines in the Mortal Realms, fine. Yeah, there's some great lore around that as well. You know, eventually that might mean we end up with Chaos Stormcast or whatever the situation, and all of that would be cool. Like, it's a good vibe, but really just making it so it feels different on the tabletop is the super fun thing. I think that's what's so exciting about the Gits book. Like, it really is, because you know you've got like all the Gits. And they're like, we're the Gits. And then there's a whole bunch of guys over there like, well, actually, we're going to be Trogs. And like, inside that, a whole book, even though you don't have any allegiance, like, they should also have stuff that buffs their sub-factions, right? Inside that book. But if they did that, and they made that work well, like Stormcast, if they made that work well, I think you would end up with some really interesting armies that were better. You'd be like, oh, cool, this is fun. Yeah. So I think that's what you could do with Stormcast, which would be a shame. Anyway, yeah. Is there any other books we haven't done? Anyone? Any outstanding War Scrolls or issues, Nath?
No. Yeah.
I know.
There's obviously, we've not gone into Daughters of Cain, but they've just been sort of updated. Cities of Sigmar. There's so much stuff in there. I don't know.
I feel like I've said one of the things that I think you could do with Cities of Sigmar really well, like because I think the cities thing that they have, the overarching sub-factions, is okay. Like, but I feel like they could make it so that you have power pairs. So like if you end up with like let's say a sorceress, she really buffs Dark Shards or Dread Spears. Yeah. If you end up with some Glade Guard, yeah, they really buff some Wild Riders, or all those characters, like very much like we saw the Rune Lord. The Rune Lord buffs the Iron Drakes really well. Like it's keyworded in. I'd like to see more power pairs. So like really, you could take like a Wood Elf army in Hallowheart or in Tempest Eye or Cities, because the characters massively buff the units around them inside that city, and that way you don't accidentally like give out some power to the whole random like set of things, if that makes sense. Like all of the different units. That's what I'd like to see.
Mine is similar along the same thing. This is not a points thing though. This is a rules thing. But I would love to see when they redo Cities of Sigmar, whatever happens next, if there was some rules interplay between races. And what I mean is like, so the Sorceress, right? She can do some mortal wounds to Darkling Covens to get more power to casting her spells. What if it was like, okay, if she stabs an elf, she gets +1 to her casting. If she stabs a Dwarden or a human, she gets +3 to her casting. Like as if an elf is like, yes, I will murder my friends. That will be better. She's like, actually, I'm going to slit some dwarf throats. That's going to power this a lot easier. I'd like, it'd be interesting to see some, or if a Free Guild general, for instance, gave the Free Guild guard around him +1 to hit and +1 to their bravery. However, he still gave +1 bravery to other species as well. Only because I think it goes one of two ways. Like what you're suggesting, like armies inside specifically focus on one species. The flip side is I'd love to see the buffs for cosmopolitan armies that have like an elf contingent, a Dwarden contingent, and a human contingent inside.
But do you not think that's harder to maintain? Like one will end up just better than the other, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think so, unfortunately. But for me, that is the little Cities of Sigmar miss is that I don't see that. And then you read, I remember reading these amazing stories about like gun lines of Dwarden war machines, and then when they get charged and the enemy get close, the human like great swords and whatnot swarm the battlements to push them all back, and then the elven archers are clearing the walls. It's that really awesome like 1, 2, 3 crossover, and the book nowhere really gives me that. Like nowhere.
Well, it doesn't, because there's no fucking dwarven war machines in the book.
Yeah, exactly. All the stories are like, yes, the dwarven cannons, and the dwarves are like, wait, we have what still? We forgot. We stopped making those. Yeah, no, we don't. Anyway, my point is that it's a shame that in this book that is about the cities, nowhere do I feel like they work together.
Okay, yeah, I understand. Yeah, you want that big hippie power of like everyone being a crew and team. Problem is when you just do have global buffs, you just end up with the best of the best taking those buffs.
Exactly.
And there's a whole bunch of war scrolls in there that are just trash, like just sweet trash. Charybdis, just sweet 0 point trash. Like they jump in there. But the cities book is interesting, and I feel some units get a little bit better just with some points. But I would like to see at least some of the characters have some changes on their war scrolls, like the actual like characters, so they buff other units around them. So that's cities. The Sylvaneth just needs a new book, so we can skip straight on, or Alariel at 0 points.
Across the board, half points for Sylvaneth.
Half points.
Alariel free.
Yeah, and Alariel free.
Oh, somebody said in the chat a lot earlier he was sitting looking at his 5,000 points of Sylvaneth, and I was just thinking if Rob had his way, that would be 2,000 points of Sylvaneth. You could field all of them.
That's true. Yeah. So I want that's the Sylvaneth buddies. I want your team. They're like, there's a guy right now who's just seen the Shadow Stalkers War Scroll and heard it's 100 points, and has just thrown 5 Tree Revenants into his garden, hoping they'll turn into something more useful than what they currently are. So some other ones, ogres. Big fan of the ogres. I would love to. Go on, Dan.
Oh, I've got my. I only have one major change for ogres that I would do, and that is that I would cut man-eater points drastically. Most interesting and coolest unit in that army, obscenely pointed, so you're never going to use them.
I have a question. Would you prefer they had a points drop, or because I feel like the conversation between gluttons, lead belchers, and
Iron Guts.
I think that triumvirate of units that are the same basically but have a different role is very, very well done. I feel like they need to identify and signify a different role for the man-eaters. Like they need something that they do that's different, or access to something that they do that's different, in my opinion. Like that's what I'd like to see from them. Like rather than points.
Yeah, or if at the moment I'm just saying that because I feel like we're not going to get rules changes. We're only going to get points changes. If I'm writing my laundry list, I leave their points high, but I give them 3 different tables. Because at the moment you choose something for them to be good at, whether they get to re-roll whatever or do something, and that's their experience. If every unit at time you put a unit of man-eaters down, for each man-eater, the unit got a different special ability. So I'm like, okay, cool. I've got a unit of 3. This one gives my unit run and charge. This one gives my unit +1 to its save, and this one gives my unit +1 bravery. Then they can be ridiculously expensive, but I get to craft this iron-hard, realm-experienced unit that's been killing and fighting across the mortal realms for a century, and as the sum total of all these skills.
I agree with that. It kind of makes sense. I'd like to see them do something with them. I'd like to see Iron Blasters get cheaper or get 2 shots. I think that would make sense, and then they go up to 4 shots in Underguts, and then you might have an actual game. Having played Underguts, Iron Blasters, 4 of them, shooting twice, felt like I was shooting nothing. It was a waste of everyone's time. So I'd like to see that. I'd like to see a War Scroll rewrite, obviously, of the Thunder Tusk, because it does little to nothing, and again, its role in the army needs to be re-identified. Obviously, I think that the Grots are perfect. Flawless.
Change not a thing, and do not change the Tyrant's command ability in relation to them.
No.
They need to, keeping the Gutbuster keyword for them, quiche. Beautiful.
Yeah. I feel like you also need to make Butchers a 2-cast and a 2 unbind wizard. All of the spellcasters, I feel like it's super unfair that you've got such swoly boys who are just thinking super hard to cast 1 spell, and then there's just all sorts of hilarious grots or whatever, name something else. There's a pink horror who's like, I'm a wizard too! And he's like, fuck. So I think...
he's also... But Rob, he is just as good as a bloke who sold his soul to the emotional incarnate of magic. So... that seems fair. Sure, they're not as good as a dead guy who's been doing realm dust meth, but they're still okay.
Firebelly, I'd like to see go up to a 3-cast wizard. And
have a good spell?
I'd actually like him to get his entire 6 spell, like a spell lore of 6, so I could take multiple Firebellies, all of which have just different named versions of Fireball, like Fireball, Hot Streak...
Fireballer.
Lava line.
Spicy curry.
Yeah. I want that, definitely. Who doesn't want to see 6? Go on.
Gorges. The chat's been like, what about Gorges? The laundry list of things we're talking about is things that we'd love to see. I personally do really think that this book was well written, though. I think there's things I'd like to see changed, but there are some abilities that I don't love and bits that are missed, but I like this book personally.
Fireball 2 is my favourite one. I like the book as well, but I feel like the internal balance, because you do see your bad stone horns. I get it. That's why I'm such a big fan of Stuart McCowan's list, where he's been running the Iron Guts, and I respect Parr for running a whole bunch of fucking Underguts with scrap launchers. Earlier on in the Ogre Moor Tribes WhatsApp chat, actually, I did say I like scrap launchers, and honestly, I felt like I was fucking getting punched in the ass. Yeah, there's a bunch of people like, well, you're wrong, and I was like, I like him though. What are you gonna say? I like him. So I feel like their war machines could do with a buff. Not because the army's not necessarily good in of itself. I just feel like there should be some internal parity where it changes. Thanks to John Thompson for donating £10 to the show. Pair character jumping up and down saying #1 fan. Thanks, John Thompson. It's so lovely of you donating 10 quid to the show. We will spend that on owning more parts of Nottingham on Earth 2.
Just buy anything Games Workshop own.
Someone's asking if I'm denying gorges and that I'm body shaming them, and you're exactly right. No guts, no place in an ogre army. That's what we know. It's not thin shaming almost, because they have abs, and having abs in a ogre kingdom's army, in a Moor tribe's army, is just a horror show. Even though I'm putting together another butcher right now, and I was like, oh, that's right, he's got a belly button. He's got because he doesn't have a gut plate. I was like, what is this thing that I'm cleaning stuff out of? And then I was like, oh, that's his gut. Oh my gosh, look at that. That's a beautiful thing, because I've converted mine previously or used other ones. And yeah, so I'm afraid that gorges just have no place in ogre society. For those who aren't aware, a gorger is an ogre that was born without a gut, so they just basically throw it into a pit of bones and offal, and then leave it there to die. And sometimes they survive and go crazy with the shame of not having a gut, and then they eat things in the game, but they're not that great at it.
Well, I was just going to... Great points, Dan, and you have inspired me just to quickly cycle back and just be like, now, some people might say this is not okay, but I'd like to see her at 180 points, maybe 140, and that would be the Troggoth hag, obviously. Now, I know that's some aggressive devaluing, points-wise. Yeah. Right. Because, Nathan, currently the Troggoth hag is...
300 and something?
Yeah. Now I know cutting her points in half sounds bold, but I would argue, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of the jury, yeah, this is the Age of Sigmar you could have, yeah? A bunch of fucking eels running around, yeah, right? And then some skinks blowing your fucking dick off, yeah? Or 3 noble women of the realm, yeah, puking on you and hitting you with a big stick. Make a choice.
It's so easy.
In my mouth, mama.
You really need to play to the fucking crowd. This is what Games Workshop don't really get. They're like, I guess we can make them buy loads and loads of kit. Like, so earlier on, Stephen was like, I'd say Saurus Knights are good. Yeah, Saurus Knights are good in the game. They're good in the game. But are we all lessened as individuals that anyone sees them on the table? Yes. Yes, we are. It's disgusting. We have to constantly talk about Marauders. Does anyone like talking about Marauders? Because they look awful. They look like people who inject synth oil in their body. Yeah? Right?
Great to paint, though. Great to paint. Great guys.
Is it even a choice? No, I did load the question, let's be fair. Right, Flesh Eater Courts. Flesh Eater Courts. What do you think about the old FEC? Not forgetting that they won an event in Australia, nay, a week ago.
Give them another unit. I'm just bored of them. They've got such a small model range. I don't think I necessarily want any points changes for them. I just want them to have more. I'm sick of seeing the same things.
Well, I feel like they could make horrors a little bit more competitive and drop in the points for the horrors, ultimately, not forgetting. But they don't have a lot of war scrolls at the end of the day. So they're going to play the way that they play. I would love to halve their points, but take it so they can never fight twice off them. Do you know what I mean? I just take that off them, but that seems unfair. But yeah, and similarly, I'd also do that to Fire Slayers. I would take off being able to fight twice for Fire Slayers. They can keep the strike first, but they've got to lose the fight twice. But then I don't know what I would do with Fire Slayers points wise to rectify that, if that makes sense. But that fight twice, Nathan, you know about the Fire Slayers fight twice. You got any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, it does. They are fairly limited in what they do. They're just there to fight, aren't they? And so you want them to be good at that. So unless you could give them some other abilities to sort of compensate for that, maybe.
Well, that's it. Oh, go on. Sorry, carry on.
Sorry, yeah. I don't know, but yeah, give them some movement shenanigans or something like that, maybe.
Well, I was thinking, a good point being made in the chat by War Machine. Like, it wouldn't be terrible to see all monster keywords or behemoth battlefield role count as 10 on objectives. And I know. The sound of 1,000 ogre players being like, no, our thing. And it's just like, it just feels like the right move. Do you know what I mean? As like a global change.
Don't help Speckles.
Well, I mean, it helps for shooting courts, but it helps all like anything. There's a reason.
No, it should just be the wounds. However many wounds you got, that's how many. Rather than count models, it should be count wounds.
Okay, all right, that's the thing.
So
So Archeon would count as 20. So, but as he got wounded,
Yeah,
it
but
would
as he
reduce
takes
down.
damage, then he counts as less.
Oh,
Makes
that's
sense.
interesting.
It is hard to, like, if you're missing an arm and the majority of your face, pretty hard to keep hold of the flag if you've got a bunch of spears sticking out of you.
Yeah, it's not. You don't do it quite as well. I think that's true. Fire Slayers. Just talking about Fire Slayers. Horus seems to think Lords of the Lodge is perfect. Pretty certain everyone's experience of it is the opposite of that.
I'd also love to be able to tell them apart. Can we just make it mandatory that Fire Slayers players need to paint their hair different colors for all of their units so I know what I'm looking at? Yeah, that's right. I said it, Fire Slayers.
Racist.
Yeah. Oh, see, now that's a cool change. Razor Wolf, you know the Stone Mage and how it makes it so that the big cowmen don't bracket when they're nearby. It would be nice to see them include that for like other monsters or other units, kind of like, or have other little buff units around. You could do that with something like Softly Barpipe. It could make it that you don't bracket on like the cool, like the Great Unclean ones, or
you just wanted to say his name.
I did, but like, who doesn't want to have him in the map? All right, I'm gonna get dogged on for this, but I'm gonna say it. Legion of Asgore, they need
to be gone. Just gone, I think.
The show's over. Let's go home.
Yeah, we're talking about what we'd like to do for competitive Age of Sigmar, Rob, not for your little homebrew.
Okay, well, listen, I'm just gonna say it. Could come down 10 points. No, they can't. That's fine. Based on everything else that's happening in the game, I feel like they could do with some love. But I'm pretty certain that the reason they've been kept around is, and they've got some narrative. Phil Kelly put it into the Age of Sigmar 2 book. There's definitely Chaos Dwarf narrative in Age of Sigmar main canon now, which does make me think we'll eventually get a Chaos Dwarf mainline book, which means you guys are fucked, because I will talk about that all day long.
Do you know that week?
Yeah.
I'm sick. Just so you know.
But I think that they should support it a little bit this winter FAQ or the next edition of the game. I think there should be some, but there is big hints. And in fact, actually, if you look at the Warcry box set, there are some Chaos Dwarves in the Iron Golems, baby. So they exist. So I feel like we are
in the Pit Fighter ones. Yeah, the Tyrants. Spire Tyrants.
Yeah. So
I think they were mentioned in the Gargan book, weren't they? I don't know.
I think maybe
in the lore. Yeah. They've been mentioned a few times.
Which means I think that like you're gonna see, like, you didn't hear anything about Idneth, and then like literally a battle tome before they were like, the fish people of the sea. You were like, what the fuck are those? And they were like, the new faction. So I think they're teasing it in now, basically, which is fun. And
I think they're ringing the death knell. They're just going like dong, just so that you've got one last little bit of hope before they return them to the annals of history.
We're keeping them.
The anals.
Right, is there anyone in the chat, or have you three got anything that we think that we've missed, generally?
The orcs.
Oh, of course. Nathan, you got any? You tell me what you think about the orcs.
I think the Maw Crusher could do with losing a few points. He's still 400, not 50 points.
Why? Can we take 100 points off him? That seems really fair.
Yeah.
He can't fight twice.
I mean, if you compare him to like the big cow mountain things and stuff like that.
Gawking on Terrorgeist.
Yeah, the turtle now. Yeah, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Oh my god, who wins in a fight? The turtle or the Maw Crusher? I feel like it's the turtle.
Maw Crusher wins every fight he's in, but yeah. But we're not talking about that. Talking
All
about
right,
points.
sorry.
Yeah. And then the rest of the Angel stuff is pretty much there or thereabouts, maybe. Bone splitter stuff could probably do with a little bit of points adjustment here and there, but it's not far out. Maybe 10 points here or there taking off. But otherwise, yeah, I think
feel like the Mega Boss. I feel the Mega Boss and More Crusher is the big ticket item that needs to be addressed, right? And I know someone's just in the chat comparing across factions can be bad, but ultimately, you know, a Ghoul King on Terrorgeist does equal to or if not more damage than a More Crusher and can fight twice, and then that still isn't like they're still not the scariest units in the game right now. So transfer that across. I feel like the More Crusher could do with some love because it's pointed very aggressively for no particular reason. I sometimes do honestly think Games Workshop or the guys that do the points look at the model and then they think, oh, I bet he's 450 points. And then the other fella's a bit smaller, they're like 320. Like, if you look at the size of Basiladon, you think it's quite little, 320 points. Fuck him, he's only tiny. More Crusher, like, whoa, he's big, isn't he? 400. That's why the Corn Dragon's 1,200 points. No other reason. They're like, how good is he in a fight? They're like, he's just giant, isn't he? He's just loads.
That's not how we do it. Put him on a scale. Oh, he's 1.2 kgs. That's 1,200 points.
Oh my gosh. This model weighs the same amount as a baby. Okay,
Also,
well, if you were to put a toddler on a table with all the wood ollies, would they smash a bunch of them? Yeah, of course a toddler would smash some toys. Okay, well, we'll point this the same way we would point a human child in a game of Warhammer.
Doesn't he also count as one model on an objective?
He does. He really does. Also, Nathan, everyone seems to think you've cracked it. We have been trying to work out the secret of Games Workshop pointing for a while, and maybe it's just based on weight, which we've never considered, ultimately. There's a couple of other bits. The Bone Splitters part could do with some love, I do feel. I think you could knock off some points. I know I'm never for the little cowardly 10, 20 point changes that they make, so just, I don't know, take 30 points off some fucking Bone Splitter units and let's see what happens. That sounds fun, ultimately. And then the Rogue Idol should come... Is the Rogue Idol 410 still? Like, it needs to come back to 400 for allies, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Right, so, but, like, let's make him cheaper. Let's make him 380, because that makes it more fun. Because he's still just, like, meh, isn't he?
I mean, he goes... How many points is one of those mountains that the elves get to play with?
320.
Oh, it's got to be the same points as that mountain. So both mountains. Yeah.
Maybe with Forge World models, they could do a thing. You know, like when you buy it, you get a little certificate. So you get a little piece of paper that says this model is a genuine Forge World model, and then it has like a date stamp on it. And for the next 6 months, it's 10 points in a game. You spent a lot of money, 10 points in the game.
And so all of a sudden, England dominates every tournament scene across the globe because they've got access to the cheapest Forge World products. Yeah, thanks a lot, you dickhead.
Dan, don't worry about it. It's only 3 weeks till we won't be able to export fucking anything. Yeah? Like, you'll be over in Canada, you'll be like, what even are these models?
I'm literally waiting until your country devolves into like a rainy version of Mad Max. Like Mad Max was dry desert. You guys are going to be mud and bog swamp. And then I'm going to do is I'm just going to be over here. I'll be like, hey, you send me all of the best war dollies and I'll PayPal you some chips.
Some real money when we're just living on theoretical English pounds.
No, I'll be like, I've got a bag of half-eaten crisps, and you'll be like, oh my gosh, we haven't had crisps in 2 years.
I'm gonna be trading all my Forge World models. Thanks to the Art of War 40k for raiding us. By the way, we've been raided by some 40k lads.
Oh,
yeah, that's lovely of you. We're talking about how. Go on, what?
I'd like to say about the 40k lads, if they brought official Forge World models, would like them for 10 points for 6 months.
There's not a 40k lad in the world that's bought an official Forge World model in a long time. Yeah.
This is the Earth 2 version of it, though. The Earth 2 version is where you get your Forge World models for 10 points.
Yeah. Go on.
No, you tell them, Rob.
I was just going to say, for any of the 40k guys who are in here, this is now the official channel of Games Workshop Earth 2. which is we own Games Workshop, but on Earth 2. It's not the easiest thing to explain, but realistically, do you own any part of Games Workshop? No, we own it all, but in Earth 2. So if you want any points changes or readjustments or FAQs for what 40k might look like, but in Earth 2, we can officially do that now.
Yeah.
Which is fun. Right, okay. We've done pretty much all of the armies. Oh, Legions of Nagash. Legions of Nagash is the last one. How would you... Oh, Hippoflossamus. Thanks for subscribing. He's trying to butter us up now because he wants to...
He knows Earth 2's where it's at.
Skaven. Oh, fuck yeah. All right, so let's do Skaven first. How would we, for the Winter FAQ points adjustment, what do we think needs to happen to Skaven? They were at one point, obviously, super simple, and we are going to take the Warp Lightning Vortex up to 383 points, which is a 303 point increase. But anything else do you think needs to happen? I mean, they've been nerfed a lot since the book release. Clan Rats are fine. Clan Rats
Too
are super
expensive.
okay.
They need to be 60 points for 20.
Okay, you're wrong. James is painting it. You're an idiot. Like, so that's not okay. I'll go to Nathan.
I've got more than I can fit in my list. Let's just reduce them for one book.
Nathan, what do you think?
The problem is when Skaven came out, they were super under-costed for everything else that was around them. But then, since then, they've sort of been battered a bit whilst everything else, all the new books have come in a load cheaper. So they could probably do with a few favourable point adjustments.
Probably on Clan Rats.
Stop talking. Yeah. Doomwheel down 40 points. That's what I say.
Yeah. I got 2 of them as well. That's fine. Reduce them.
Yeah.
I would argue that Skaven aren't in a terrible place. Like, you got to play them. They're tough to use. There's a high skill cap. They've got a variety of units. The book's pretty wide as well. Some of those other units could probably do with a little points reduction. Some of the Eshin line could get 10-20 points knocked off, and it becomes quite scary ultimately. It's interesting, like Nathan said, there's been some aggressive repointing over FAQ since book launch, leading to what now is, I wouldn't say overcosted Vermin Lords, but they're pointed quite heavily compared to some of the newer stuff coming out. All their War Scrolls.
Yeah, they were super cheap when they came out, the Vermin Lords. That was crazy for what they could do. But now, it is, like you say, they're a bit... Yeah, they're in the mix, aren't they? I do think James is right. Maybe the Clan Rats could come down, because they are pretty crap.
Yeah, but you could take loads of them, and they're meant to be crap.
Look at Rob getting triggered!
So you should pay crap for them.
Oh my god. I agree with Pete. Doomwheel should not be a behemoth. That's the most important part. So you can put 4 in your list without, and then being able to take a Screaming Bell. Because then you can create a cool chariot list of just big things. Or, most importantly, I'd also like to vote for the Hell Pit Abomination to come down maybe 20 points or come down. I think the Hell Pit, he's got 2d6 movement in a shooting meta with a 5-up save. What is this guy going to do? Yeah.
How many points is he?
Huh?
How many points are they?
200 probably. Yeah, 200 about the minute. Yeah. Did Rob just call the Doomwheel a chariot? I did not call it a chariot because it doesn't fit into the chariot classification, which is 2 wheels and pulled by something. We all know that's the facts. Okay. So that's Skaven. And then, what is the last one? Legions of Nagash. Take away their commandability. I honestly don't care whether or not that improves or doesn't improve the faction. I just don't want them to res whole units. I don't want them to do it when they first did it and won every tournament, and I don't want them to do it now. Don't care if it makes them weaker or stronger. Anyone got any thoughts on that?
No, I'm on board.
Yep, that works for me.
Yeah.
I'm on board. So what we're saying is, just to summarise the complete roundup, Legions of Nagash lose the command ability, Clan Rats get half pointed.
No. They do not lose
any
points.
Absolutely not what we said.
That is what we said at all. At all.
They're the same cost as skinks. It makes no sense.
What do you mean? Yeah, no, it's not. That's not because of the Clan Rats War Scrolls. It's because the Skinks War Scrolls mental.
Well, so leave that fine and reduce Clan Rats. I'm
yeah,
just
but
doing it because it's annoying, you know.
Come on, Help It should be down to like, I don't
Yeah.
know, 170, 180. No, not even that. 160. They're hilarious.
Yeah.
Like, they should just run around. They'll get murdered anyway. Well, it's been a pleasure, ladies and gentlemen of the court.
We got there.
Yeah, we got there. We did more than I thought we would. Fuck, it's been a long show. I'm so sorry.
Look, we were designing all of Earth 2's upcoming winter FAQ. It took a little bit of work. James, just so you know, I'm looking into small islands off the coast to build our. Well, maybe one could be like a games island, and another one could be where we put the people that don't war dolly the way that we want them to war dolly.
Well, don't buy it yet, because apparently I brought Games Workshop. Now I get a little code, so you get 5% off. Don't buy it yet.
Yeah. Okay, wait. Okay, well, I'll buy us a tournament island and a dissident island.
What the fuck is going on?
Yeah, we did do Legions of the Gash. Our only note to Legions of the Gash was take away their command ability, which is like I would have done that on day one, and I'll do it 3 years later, and I'm fine with it. Right, so should we do some shout outs before we go? Nathan, I just realised you said you were sending dissidents to an island. This is not okay. Like, what?
Hey, look, James is in command here, all right? Just so you know, like James, I'm just working for him, running his not so secret police. Like anything I say is James's fault.
See, Punk Fox, and if this is your first time here, this does relate to a joke that occurred 3 hours ago. Like, if you want to, which in of itself is a joke related to the past 3 years of this show. Like, there's a lot going on. Like, Dan, as you see right there, like, he's triggered by elves. He used to be a dwarf. Nathan up there has got some real weird things going on with his underpants, which James is then making into an actual product he's selling. Yeah? And, like, there's just a lot happening. There's a whole bag. Please tune in every week. It's probably fine. Nathan, have you got any shout-outs?
I'll shout out... let's think. Let's shout out the two lads that we watched playing yesterday, and the Cockatrice Master.
The Cockmaster. Again, another joke, which makes loads of sense if you've been here before. But there's a man who loves cock. James, any shout outs?
Big shout out to anyone that is or will intend to place an order with Games Workshop 2 in Earth 2 in the near future.
Oh my god. Dan, any shout outs?
I'm going to throw a quick shout out to everybody who we got to see and commentate playing on the stream over the weekend. It was awesome fun, and it restored my faith in humanity enough that I chose not to black bag any of them. I had a wonderful time with you and talking war dollies and just getting into competitive side of things. And Chump Hammer, I don't know if you're still in the chat or whatnot, we're going to roll some digital dice or some real dice, or we're going to war dolly something. And I'm very, very excited. I also, Scrivo, I love you, you big, beautiful chunk of humanity. You're a bit.
Go on, James.
I just thought of one more shout out, sorry.
Go on.
Big future shout out to anyone that retweets when we tweet that we brought Games Workshop.
Yeah, huge shout out to those. Huge shout out to all of those people. That's a big one. I'd like to shout out to all the Warhammer dissidents who I now feel like I'm the leader of. We've factionalized on the Honest Wargamer Monday show.
Bag, Rob.
Nathan, are we in the dissident? You in my dissidents team? I'll tell you after the show. Message you.
I'm going to start my own team.
Classic dissident.
I'll offer
Fuck you.
I'll offer you a lucrative package to join the not so secret police.
I'm going to buy my own island. Fucking hippies.
I'll buy the island for you.
Nathan, are you starting your own giant cult? Oh my god.
Giants and hippies. It'll be near Antarctica.
If anyone would like to join the cult of Nathan, please do feel free. Right, it's been a pleasure talking to all of you lunatics. Age of Sigmar super fun. You guys are great. The community's great. Love you all. Thanks for being on Patreon. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Thanks for listening to the live coverage. Tune in soon. Loads of love. And fuck you, buddy. Oh, Nate, did you do a shout out?
Yeah, I did.
Oh yeah, perfect. All right, well, fuck you, buddies.